I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next up is the roll call. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Bajent,
Here.
Clegg,
Here.
Halliburton,
Here.
Sanchez,
Here.
Thompson,
Here.
Woodings,
Here.
all present.
Thank you. And now a request for approval of the minutes from our strategic planning session and regular daytime meeting on February 23rd.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the minutes of the 10:30 a.m. and noon meetings on February 23rd, 2021.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Next up is special business. Before we start, I just wanted to flag, in case there's some confusion, earlier today, just late this afternoon, actually, I signed a new public health order, but because of the timing of it, I wasn't able to bring it to council to get it on the agenda in time for this evening. So we'll see that next week. But I want to just explain what we are aiming to do with it, because it did go into effect immediately. We started working on this Friday and then asked Central District Health yesterday morning if they would partner with our city to make it possible to have events and outdoor activities and other things in a safe way while still maintaining an important public health order that requires distancing, masking, and other protocols. And I really want to say thank you to Central District Health for their willingness to partner. Yesterday morning, when their director said yes, that he thought this was a path we should head down together, since they have an advisory but not an order at this point, he then set his team to work with our team here at the city to come up with a way that together the health entity can review and approve plans, and then we can make it possible for more things to happen this summer because we're so close to all being well. And so we will be beginning to implement this immediately. The city itself will send our plans for sports fields and other things to Central District Health for review and hopefully approval, with an aim towards protecting public health. But it allows that same opportunity for residents throughout the city to do the same in partnership with the health district. And so as we test this new way of protecting public health, but allowing more activities for our residents to occur, and we'll be learning as we go. And so one, look forward to working with those that have been partnering with us all along to protect health, but want to have some events. And the warm weather is coming, and we're hopeful that this will work so that we can all do more in safe ways, move towards recovery, while not losing the progress that we've all made together. And so that'll be on the agenda for next week, but went into effect this afternoon. Next up, we have the appointment of Ron Larson to the Building Code Board for a 4-year term ending March 2025.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the appointment of Ron Larson to the Building Code Board for a 4-year term ending March of 2025.
And if you'd like, we could do a unanimous consent. Right. Without objection?
Without objection.
Wonderful. Is Mr. Larson here?
No, Madam Mayor.
No?
No.
All right, well, if he happens to be watching or reading the minutes of our meetings in the future, I'd just like to say thank you, Mr. Larson, for your service on this important board. Appreciate it. Next up, we have the appointment of Abigail Morgan to the Public Works Commission for a 4-year term ending March 2025.
Madam Mayor, I move and ask for unanimous consent for the approval of the appointment of Abigail Morgan to the Public Works Commission for a 4-year term ending March of 2025.
Without objection? All right. And I see Abigail Morgan is here. Hello there. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here tonight.
You're welcome to say anything that you'd like to say.
I would just like to express my thanks, and I'm very honored and excited to be able to be appointed to this position, and I look forward to serving our community.
Thank you, Abigail. Anyone like
Madam
Council
Mayor?
President, your council member Halliburton, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Abigail, just wanted to say welcome to the team. I have the pleasure of getting to serve with you as the council liaison to Public Works this year. So I'm excited to be there new with you. And I just wanted to say thank you for all the work you do in the nonprofit sector as well. So welcome aboard.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, I've had the pleasure of getting to know Abigail a little bit as she works on, she's part of the staff that administers my MBA program at Boise State. And I know that she probably listens in enough that she's going to bring some really great business expertise also to the Public Works Commission. So welcome, Abigail. Really happy to have you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
thank you. Welcome, Abigail. I haven't been the liaison to Public Works for a while, but was always impressed, especially by the younger members of the Public Works Commission. It's been fun to watch where they've landed in our community, and almost all of them have been really big contributors. So thank you for your service, and you should look forward to a long life of public service, because that seems to be what it leads to. Thank you.
Well, I'll just close by saying I really appreciate your interest in serving. And as Councilmember Halliburton said, the impact you've had both as a working college student and now as a graduate in our nonprofit community. And when Public Works proposed that you become a member of the commission, I just really appreciated your interest in service so young. And I was lucky enough to join the Parks Board in my early 20s. And it made a big difference being involved in my community from that point onward, and really appreciate that you're willing to do so right now at this point in your early career.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'm really looking forward to growing and learning and being able to serve.
And Public Works is so cool, so you should have fun.
Thank you.
Take care. Good to see you. And next up, we have a reason for decision and conditions of approval for CUP 20-28. And Cody has joined us here in person to present and ask for affirmation of direction.
Hello, Madam Mayor, members of council. I feel like I'm coming out of hiding a little bit, but it's really, really good to be back.
Well, I have to say, have you not been in person?
Some of both.
Okay.
So-
Well, because when you asked me about standing there with your mask on, it suddenly made me wonder. I'm like, I can never remember anymore if I'm looking at somebody on a
Yeah.
screen or like looking at somebody actually in the room. So welcome back.
I've
It's
been,
good to
I
have
think,
you.
right below you
Yeah.
most of
Okay.
the time.
That's
there.
right. You're always in your office,
Yeah.
but not in. Okay. Welcome back. It's good to see you.
Thank you. As council will recall, you've conducted two public hearings on this item, the last of which occurred on February 2nd. As a reminder, the approval was for a special exception with a very unique combination of uses. It includes elements of a tavern, event center with live music, along with a bed and breakfast. This all occurs in an existing building. and
Cody,
in the-
could you pull the mic just a little bit closer to you, please? Thanks.
Is that better? Okay.
Yeah.
This all occurs in an existing building and in the backyard of a site located at 1502 West Franklin Street in an R3 zone. At the conclusion of the last hearing, council did vote to approve the application. You directed us to return with findings and conditions reflecting that decision. You specifically directed us to base the conditions off the suggestion or those proposed by the applicant. We did use that as a starting point. As it relates to the conditions, the motion, so the document before you includes those conditions as well as a number of those related to compliance and enforcement. I would note this evening, though, we are recommending a slight adjustment or asking for clarification on just a couple conditions. The first condition, number 5, probably could have been worded a little bit better. The intent was that the backyard area was limited at all times to 35 people. The intent wasn't to also count guests that were then staying inside at the bed and breakfast. In terms of enforcement, those staying inside at the bed and breakfast, from our perspective, it would be easiest if they didn't count towards that 35, and certainly easiest for the compliance officers, if there is a complaint, to show up and count 35 individuals in that backyard.
Just clarification on that, though. If they leave the inside of the building and move to the outdoor tavern, they are counted correctly?
Madam Mayor,
Correct.
that's correct.
Okay, thanks.
So again, really, it's really for ease of enforcement. There will be 2 occupancy permits for this location, or 2 required for this location. One for the bed and breakfast, and then one for that outdoor space. The second condition, the applicant has actually asked for some clarification as it relates to live music. Their understanding was that the decision would allow that live music for those limited number, I believe it was 20 special events. The language we originally provided you didn't include that. If your intent or desire is to allow the live music, again, for just those special events, we suggest that the minor changes on the screen be included in the motion. And then finally, we had provided you with a memo suggesting an amendment to condition 19. Our intent there was to make sure that this condition applies to the current owner, future owners, and anyone that operates a separate business on the premises. So the proposed adjustment was transmitted to you last week and is shown on the screen. With that adjustment and the clarification on those other 2 conditions, we are asking that you adopt the reason statement and conditions this evening. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Cody. Can you go back a slide to the condition? Yeah, on excluding live music. Is there a way that we can, I think that makes sense, as long as the music is not amplified. Is there a way that we can make sure that that's not, that's just acoustic live music?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Woodings, we certainly could. We could indicate only acoustic music or non-amplified music. And then I would also note that language does indicate that all noise has to comply with the Boise City noise ordinance to address that, but we could certainly add language limiting it to just acoustical music.
Excellent. And Madam Mayor, I have one more question.
Sure.
Cody, did you happen to prepare a slide around the types of upgrades that the property owner will have to make before they're able to take occupancy for their intended uses?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Woodings, not a specific slide for that. They will have to obtain occupancy permits for both, and based on the conditions, specifically that cap. You probably noticed for the special events it was limited to 49, which is a very odd number, but it was by design. Once you hit 50, some different requirements kick into place from a building code perspective. And so thus the condition for 49, and they will have to work with the building department to obtain that occupancy permit before commencing the use.
Madam Mayor, one more question, then I'll hand it over to someone else. Cody, can you go through some of I know that it's outlined in the conditions, but just for kind of the benefit of the public, if they haven't read through the entire document, some of the improvements that will have to be made before they're given occupancy?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Woodings, the list of conditions is quite extensive. There will be improvements if they haven't been made that will be need to be made to some of the restrooms, perhaps some of the gates and access spaces, accessible routes for ADA compliance. Things like that will all be required, as well as from an administrative standpoint, signing and having final approval of that parking agreement that was required.
Excellent. Thank you, Cody.
And Cody, perhaps just to help the public, if they're watching, they can probably link into the report. What pages are those conditions on?
Madam Mayor, the conditions of approval or the memo was dated March 2nd, and the conditions start on the second page of that document. And there's a series of.
That's great. They can begin reading
There's a
at
series of
page 2.
33 conditions. there.
Thanks.
Yep.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
if I could, on the live music, it seems like requiring that only to be acoustic rather than limiting it to the residential outdoor speakers that's limited otherwise is probably confusing from a code compliance standpoint. And since they have to meet noise compliance, and we had already conditioned that the only kinds of speakers they can have are residential outdoor speakers, I wonder if we could just leave it out live music, recognizing that they still can't exceed the noise standards. We've already got a lot of conditions on this, and I think code compliance is going to be difficult as it is. That seems like maybe an added layer that might not be necessary.
Oh, Cody, your speaking of amplification, seems not to.
Cutting out again? Is that
Now
better?
it's on. Yeah, for a second there was just none.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, that's certainly an approach. It would be the requirement or a limitation to only acoustical music would be above and beyond the restrictions that are already in place as written. So that's certainly at council's discretion either way.
Madam Mayor, I'll comment on that. I think that makes sense. And I think my worry is that, I mean, residential speakers aren't any less capable sometimes than commercial speakers. So I think that just sticking really close to the noise ordinance is going to be the right way to comply here.
Madam Mayor, if I could, I think my purpose in this was to not allow a live musician to bring their own amplifier and speaker, but to require them, if they do want to be amplified, to hook into the system that already exists there, which I think would make it easier to comply with the noise ordinance.
Madam Mayor,
Sure, go ahead.
I guess I need it clarified. I'm not sure where we've landed on that.
It's standing, if I understand correctly, the red lines that we're looking at right now are standing, and that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Madam Mayor, one more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cody, on condition number 19, I'm wondering if you could just kind of walk me through that quickly. So they decide to sell, somebody else decides to purchase it, what that process would look like for us if we had to go through something similar again.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, the intent really with this condition was if the owner of the bed and breakfast was maybe different than someone that was operating the tavern use, that the condition was clear that it applied to everyone. And if one or the other, the ownership or operation changed for either, that condition would apply. They need to inform us in writing, and then we would have the opportunity to walk through those conditions, report back to council. And if we've had compliance issues, especially with that annual review that's written in, that we have the ability specifically to terminate the permit.
So, Madam Mayor, follow up.
Yes,
So
go
again-
ahead.
So again, Cody, I guess just for my own clarification, the business sells, somebody else purchases it. They basically get the same conditions that the existing one had, unless council decides otherwise. So we're not going and we're not rehearing anything. We basically would be making a decision that would say, like, this is what all the things that come with conditions that come with the property. And unless something strange has happened in the past, or we have reason to believe that this person would be a bad player, they would just get the exact same conditions. We wouldn't be approving a new set of conditions for a new tenant.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, that's correct. That's a good way to summarize it.
Madam Mayor,
Go ahead.
just to put a finer point on it, anybody maybe digging up the transcript of this meeting later, I don't think we intend to create a presumption that anybody who buys this business will automatically be entitled to continue running it the way the current owners do. The way I understand this condition 19 is, in the event that they want to transfer ownership of the business, or the property, they'll need to come to us and have a conversation with the city council and get our permission. And so I think at that time, as I interpret this, we would be free to say no. You can't. We have a relationship with the current owners. It's based on them. You can't sell the business, or or whatever. I'm just flagging this because I don't want to tie our hands by having somebody later say, well, you created a presumption in the last meeting that we would be entitled to inherit this unless there was a problem. I think the intent of this condition 19 is, in the event that the property or the business is transferred in any way, we can all have a reevaluation moment there, and the city has the right to yank that permit upon that transfer, regardless of the conduct of the prior owners. That's how I understood it.
Madam Mayor, would it, following the logic of Councilmember Bajent, would it be appropriate just to have it end at the city reserves the right to terminate the permit upon a change in ownership?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Sanchez, that would be a perfectly acceptable change and probably clarifies, from my perspective, some of the concerns Councilmember Bajent has raised.
Madam Mayor,
Councilman Halliburton, sorry.
yeah, just speaking to what Council Member or Council Pro Tem Sanchez added, that would certainly be something that I would be agreeable with if that's what we wanted to move forward with.
Well, so council member, in your motion, just reflect that language change and everybody can weigh in that way officially.
Okay, go ahead and move. Madam Mayor, I move approval of the reason for decision and conditions of approval CUP 20-00028 with a change in language of, is it condition 19?
Just say as reflected in conversation, maybe,
As reflected in conversation.
since we lost the slide.
Thank
Second.
you.
Just before we vote, Cody, you have the language.
Madam Mayor, yes.
Great. All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I heard somebody.
Madam Mayor, just to
Yes.
clarify the motion if I could, it's with the changes presented to conditions 5, 16, and 19 with the additional clarification on the language of 19. Is that correct?
Madam Mayor, did we actually make changes in 6 and?
The red line was.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
5, 16, and 19 all had changes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
And second, good. I can't remember who made a second.
Yes, second.
All right. So we have a motion and second concur with that clarification. With that, clerk, will you call the roll?
Madam Mayor,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
it's okay. I just wanted to make a quick comment. Looking back to the conditional use permit hearing, this was a really tough one for me. So I wanted to just reflect that we worked really hard to make sure that these conditions of approval really reflected what we wanted to see happen at this space, really reflect the concerns of the immediate neighborhood to ensure that this was compliant with the requirement that the proposed use is not more impactful to the neighborhood than what would otherwise be already permitted in the neighborhood. And so this really does. And I also just want to underline that the building will have to be brought up to ADA compliance in the backyard, both with surfaces and with access to a restroom. The business owners will have to pull all necessary permits and have all necessary inspections by the city prior to gaining occupancy for all of the permitted uses. And so this will really allow the occupant to bring this building into compliance and to do what they promised. And if they don't, then I feel like it's pretty clear that it's game over. So I encourage them to do so. And just wanted to get that in the record. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? All right. Now that we have two people in here, it is actually more complicated when there's just one, because I'm never quite sure where I'm hearing a voice from anymore, because now I have people on both sides of me and a screen of 4 people. But it's awesome to have 2 council members here. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Great. Next up, we have the consent agenda. All items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the council and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and removed from the general order of business and considered in its normal sequence.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Next up under ordinances, there's nothing on first reading, but we have one ordinance 521 on second reading.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that all ordinances on the second reading calendar be read by number and title only and filed for the third reading calendar.
With that objection? Right.
ORD-5-21, an ordinance amending Title 9, Chapter 2, Boise City Code to adopt exemptions to development impact fees for affordable housing, to provide for process and criteria for such exemptions and provide an effective date.
Thank you. We have no ordinances on third reading. No unfinished business, so we'll move on to new business. And first up tonight is our annual public hearing on public transit. We will have Bree Brush and Karen Gallagher present from here, and I believe, is VRT staff available as well if there are questions? Nope, just city. All right, so Bree and Karen will present from here. And then for members of the public, I have two people that signed up in advance. And so I'll go ahead and call you. And then if there are others that are watching and hope to testify, just raise your little Zoom hand and the clerk will help me call on you and we'll go through folks and then hear from council after that. Of course, questions are always welcome. Yes, go ahead, Bree. Welcome again.
Great. As a reminder, my name is Bree Brush. I work in the mayor's office on transportation and spend some time working with our transportation partner agencies. In your earlier work session, you got some more details on this process, but this public hearing is one component of our annual funding agreement with Valley Regional Transit, where we get an update. Oh, it looks like Stephen Hunt is still on the line and he can answer questions.
Great. Thank you, Stephen.
So we had an update from VRT earlier in the afternoon. You had an update from Karen and I on some FY22 initiatives. And just as a reminder, those were focusing on State Street, our best in class investments, and how we can really maximize our transit investments as a whole. If afterwards you have any questions, Karen and I will stand, and it looks like Stephen is here as well. So thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
thank you. Before we start, if I could just say a few words. First of all, thank you to both VRT staff and city staff for working hard to bring forward these priorities for this year. Also, VRT did a great job of presenting the outcome of our priorities from last year. And we, despite COVID, really made progress on all of those. So kudos to them. Of the three priorities this year, the State Street, as many people know, is near and dear to my heart. For those of you who listened in earlier, you know that we have money because of the CARES funding and the fact that VRT has used much of it for operations. We have some of the funding from the city's contribution to put toward improvements on State Street, a significant amount, over $6 million. And we're hoping to be able to really bring the corridor up to full bus rapid standards. One thing that remains in question is whether or not we're going to be able to finish out the 6th and 7th lanes throughout the corridor. Right now, they exist in the intersections, and as further intersections are improved, they'll exist in those. My understanding of how the corridor will work if as a real bus rapid transit corridor is that if we can finish out those 6th and 7th lanes with the accompanying bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure and connections, as well as whatever stops might be scheduled for those interstitial segments, that both operations of transit will work better, bicycle and pedestrian access will work better, and frankly, driver operations will work better. And so it's, as you're speaking, if you have an opinion on that or any experience with those kinds of amenities, I would love to hear about that. And thank you for everyone who is planning to participate tonight. I can tell you I've gotten 3 written responses. One was encouraging us to go fully electric as soon as we could. One was encouraging a real upgrade in bicycle and pedestrian connections. And one was to continue upgrading our best-in-class services. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. All right, first up I have Ethan Schweitzer Gaslin.
All right. Hello, Madam Mayor and council members. Pleasure to be with you this evening. And thank you to the city staff and VRT staff for being here as well. This may not surprise you. For those of you who know me, I am here to encourage you to maximize the city's contributions to VRT and particularly to continue pushing forward with the plans on State Street. You know, we're always going to be making up for a lacking state system, I think, in the state of Idaho until we're able to remedy that situation. And of course, other cities need to be contributing to VRT as well, but Boise always has the opportunity, I think, to lead in that area. And I am a big fan of the State Street project. I strongly believe that that has the potential to be a catalyst to help show people what transit can do and how it can fit into their lives, particularly as the State Street corridor continues to develop, as transit-oriented development continues to happen in concert with these kinds of service improvements. And particularly how these kinds of service improvements, as Councilwoman Clegg mentioned, can enhance level of service for all modes. I definitely think that's a really important thing to be focusing on, particularly in terms of building support within the surrounding neighborhoods. I think that improving bike and pedestrian connectivity can really help show people how this can benefit everybody and drivers as well, certainly. And, you know, this is a tough time, certainly economically, but I think as our economy recovers and the population continues to grow, this investment will continue to deliver the bang for the buck that we know it does and help the members of our community who've been struggling most economically and who most need that assistance to kind of get back on their feet. And I think we run the risk of, if there's a lack of investment, having a death spiral. I think this is a concern for all transit agencies right now, but having a death spiral where the system receives less investment and therefore is less useful and therefore is used less and therefore receives less investment. So I hope that we can avoid that. And as our climate continues to change, you know, this is also, the transportation emissions are also the largest source, I believe, of carbon emissions. And as the city is considering various green energy plans, you know, I think it's really important to be thinking about how we can cut carbon emissions. But if there's not another option for people besides driving alone, then there's really very little way to kind of chip away at that block. So this will be a very important thing that we can do in that to make on that effort. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Ethan, Madam Mayor, could I ask a question of Ethan?
Yeah, just second, Council President.
Madam Mayor, point of order. Could we have his address?
We need his address. Okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's all right. I had thought that we hope to get to the point where we don't have to ask those, so I thought maybe we had figured that out. Go ahead, though.
Gladly. My address is 918 North 7th Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702.
Thank you. Go ahead, Council President.
Thank you. Thank you, Ethan. And anyone else who's planning to testify, another thing that would be really helpful to hear from you as we work with Valley Regional Transit to understand what kind of information will help us and help the public feel confident in the investments we're making in terms of financial transparency. If you have any ideas on that, I'd love to hear them.
Confidence in terms of investment, financial transparency in the investment. I mean, again, I think my mind just first goes to what you had mentioned about improving pedestrian and bike connectivity and that kind of shedding light for people on the way that this can impact everyone's lives. I think it can be challenging sometimes to improve service before it reaches that tipping point where you start to see a bigger uptick in ridership. And I hope that the plans for State Street will deliver that. But again, it might take some time before people realize the way that this can fit into their lives and that they can, in fact, plan their lives around being able to use transit service in terms of where they live and how they choose to get around the community. So hopefully those other kinds of connections will help bridge that gap. That would be my.
Great, thank you.
All right, well, Ethan, thank you for joining us this evening. Appreciate it. It was good to see you. And for future folks that are testifying, the clerk is actually going to get your address from you through Zoom with your registration, so that in live time streaming, you don't have to give your address over the live stream. And so with that, clerk, is Mary Beth Nutting on the line? Great. Mary Beth, welcome.
Hello, Madam Mayor and Boise City Council members. I primarily get around by bus and bicycle. And last year before the shutdown, I had a meeting in Meridian in the morning that I needed to go to. And so I aspired to take the bus there, not knowing how difficult it would be, but I worked on my route that I needed to go from Northwest Boise from my home to the Main Street station downtown, where I would catch the Overland bus, which would take me south of the city because there is not a bus that goes through downtown Meridian. I would then have to get off the bus, get my bike off the front, and then bike to town. So what would be a 30-minute car ride would be a 2-hour commute by bus. And then I would be stuck in Meridian because there is no service during the day because they discontinue it until rush hour again. And they started again at 4 o'clock. So what would be a very brief meeting in Meridian would take me all day. And I know that the city of Boise has limited impact on the services that are in Meridian. But what would have been ideal is to take the Fairview bus. But I don't know if many of you are aware that the Fairview bus actually does not go past Milwaukee. At Milwaukee, it turns towards the mall. And so we're missing all of those businesses and neighborhoods and apartments that are being built in West Boise. Also, there is the busiest intersection in the state of Idaho, Fairview and Eagle, with all of those services in the area that we're missing. Again, I know that Meridian needs to contribute more to VRT in order to have those services. And I was very happy in the work session to hear Stephen Hunt say that Fairview is going to be looked at because I'm sure all of you know all of the building that is going on in that area and in Meridian too. A lot of apartment complexes going up on Cherry, on Records Way by the Village, and a lot of people in Boise that work in Boise are having to move to that area because they can't afford to pay rent or buy a house in Boise. So I would like to encourage you to continue to try to collaborate with the city of Meridian in providing that connectivity between the two cities and of course Napa and Caldwell. I appreciate everything that's been done with trying to extend services to Eagle. And I think that's it, but I love everything that's being done on State Street. I really appreciate everything you've done. And also thank you to the city for everything that they've given to Valley Regional Transit. I mean, because what you do allows me to take the bus so that I can get to work. Both of my children, they took the bus and they were able to get to school, to get to the bus. We're a one-car family and we wouldn't be able to work and go to school without these bus services. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Questions or comments for Mary Beth while we still have her?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to thank both the folks who presented tonight and who shared their support of the work that the city of Boise does in supporting VRT. And I especially appreciate Mary Beth. I've known Mary Beth for many, many years. We met when I worked for the Girl Scouts, and she continues to be a volunteer and just somebody in our community who, as they say, walks the walk, or in this case, bikes the bike. And so I just really appreciate her making this a priority. She uses her social media to really bring lived experience to folks so that they can see. You know, I'm one of those folks. I don't ride a bicycle, and I wish I could, and one day I will, but she's a great ambassador for using the different alternative transportation forms that we have in the city. So thank you, Mary Beth.
Thank you.
Excellent. So
No
good to see you.
questions?
Oh, wait. Was that you, Mary Beth?
It was me. I'm so disappointed. You know, I love to talk about transportation. I wanted more questions.
Well, luckily we all have the opportunity to run into you downtown and other places where we continue that conversation throughout the year, and truly do appreciate your advocacy and commitment to transit. You set an example.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor and City Council.
So good to see you.
You too.
Madam Mayor, we currently do have 4 people requesting to speak. And so I have Alexis Pickering, and on deck is Rory Hester.
Great. Alexis Pickering and then Rory Hester. Hi there, Alexis. Good to see you.
Hi, everyone. For the record, I'm Alexis Pickering. As many of you probably know, I happen to be one of your Ada County Highway District Commissioners. I just wanted to be clear, I'm testifying today personally as one of your residents, and not representing ACHD in the commission in any way. And these thoughts are my own.
Just to be clear, that's why I called you by your name rather than your title, because I thought that was the case, but truly do appreciate your service. Thank you.
So as you've heard, you know, Compass recently presented the results of a study on a variety of transportation options, mass transit options across the valley and in Boise. And so there were several concepts that were highlighted for the city. And Compass, you know, asserted that our communities must begin planning now in order to realize a truly comprehensive mass transit network in the Valley in 20 years. You know, we're growing so rapidly, as you all know. And these conversations, I mean, you all have led the way by having these conversations internally and reaching across multiple cities and jurisdictions. But as our communities continue to rise in housing costs, our transportation network will continue to become more constrained, with folks moving out of Boise, unfortunately, and having to commute into Boise for their jobs. So to answer, you know, Councilwoman Clegg's question, I mean, I think I totally support you in Fairview and State Street and those key sections that you were talking about. But I implore you to engage and continue to invest in VRT and public transportation, but also reach and connect with the Boise Metro Chamber if you haven't already. And I think let's leverage this Compass data and study to have bigger conversations around how do we capitalize on this investment that Boise has been making for so long, and come up with that business case, because it's going to be really hard for a lot of folks as they're having to move further and further out. So my hope and request is, like several people have said before me, is to continue to invest in the ways that you have and continue to do the great work and asking how you can improve. But you know, the landscape has changed, and I think we have a lot of support in a lot of different areas of our communities now to be more engaged and be more willing to have those conversations alongside you. So I'm happy to answer any other questions that you have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions? So good to see you. Thanks for joining us this evening. And Rory Hester, you're up next. Hi there, welcome. Oh, you're
Okay,
muted. Oh,
yeah. Can
now
you
we
hear
can-
me now? Yes. Okay. Hey, I'm Rory Hester. I live in North Collister, or I live off Collister and State, and I'm actually here to support another project later. But I heard the State Street plan, and I am a huge fan. I've spoken to some of you about development along State Street, which I think is underutilized as far as housing. And I just wanted to point out that that the public transport aspect goes hand in hand with getting development in that part of Boise. You know, better buses, more transportation is going to make more developers want to put up more houses, more apartments along that route, and especially since down into Eagle, I mean, that has grown so fast. Plus, it's got easy access to the other routes, Greenbelt. My only comment I will make in a sort of negative way is, though I am not a big user of the bus, I travel for a living. I'm in Florida right now. There's not many east-west, or I mean north-south routes from that section. You know, we can go to Glenwood, but I don't even know if there is a Veterans Park route. I mean, that's just something that I've noticed when I've tried to look at bus routes to get places. But that's all I have, and hopefully you have no questions. So, thank you.
Looks like there are no questions. Thanks so much for joining us. I guess we'll see you again later this evening, but thanks for jumping in on this too.
Madam Mayor, our next two speakers are Jared Osteen, and on deck is Jody Peterson-Steigers.
Great, thanks. Welcome, Jared. Nice to see you.
Hello, good to see you folks as well. I don't know if I give my name. I'm just going to give my address also. My name is Jared Austin. I live at 4211 West Fairmont Street, just so I don't get in trouble. I would just like to thank you folks for having this hearing here tonight. I am a big believer in the freedom and ability that public transportation can give to a community when done well. So I would just like to applaud your thought that's going into these extra funds. This really gives Valley Regional Transit kind of an ability that they've been missing in the past, as far as just extra funds beyond just the day-to-day that they have to cobble together from the different municipalities around here. This gives them a bit of freedom to actually kind of vision out a little bit farther than they have in the past. I think that the idea of moving State Street towards a more BRT like model is great. I think it's important to have really good examples of public transportation that we can point to say, yes, this is how this can work in our community, and this is how good it can be. So just kind of casting a vision for our community of how good things can be. In addition to that, I'd also encourage you folks to just look at more investment in other corridors that connect or are close to the State Street corridor, really having that network effect of routes all running at very high frequencies with very little headway. That really exponentially amplifies the investments that we make in those areas. Because as soon as you get to the point where you don't have to look at a transit schedule, State Street really is almost there at 15-minute headways. That's when you really start to see people take advantage of your investments in those areas. So I would just encourage you to keep working on the State Street corridor. That sounds great, but don't forget about increased service on other connecting routes, just to try to amplify our investments. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead. And thanks, Jared. Councilmember Halliburton.
Jared, did you have any specific routes? I know that Rory just mentioned veterans. And so I know you're kind of talking about in general overall, which is important. I just wanted to make sure that if you had any specific ones that you had noticed, that I took note of it.
Not that I'd like to recommend here. I can maybe think about that more before I shoot my mouth off. But yeah, I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Jared. Yep.
Thank you. Good to see you this evening. And next up, we've got Jody Peterson Steigers. Hi, Jody. It looks like you might have some other folks wanting to testify as well. Welcome.
I do, thank you. Yeah, I'm Jody Peterson Steigers, the Executive Director of Interfaith Sanctuary Homeless Shelter. And obviously transportation is always a big conversation with our guests, and also a big part of their frustrations as far as being more successful in employment options and housing options. And so some of our guests wanted to testify tonight. And so we're here, and I'm gonna let them each introduce themselves, but I did want to just put out there that the ideas that you guys are looking at, the location where you're looking at it, you are actually part of the homeless solution. Transportation has been a missing piece for a really long time, and being able to have our guests who are employed have the option of Sunday service and after hours. These things are what really eliminate opportunity for them. And so we're really excited to be part of the conversation, and very grateful to all of you who are working on really trying to look at a transit system that has bones. So our first speaker is Kevin. I'm going to let him introduce himself. And we've got 3 speakers, and then some people were not able to be here, but they wrote me little notes, so I'll read them afterwards, just so you have a full picture of what it's like for this particular population. Thanks, you guys.
So, Jody, we'll reserve your 2 minutes for reading after, and then each person that's here has 3 minutes to testify. So yep, so each of you just introduce yourself. We'll start the clock over. I can never remember if you can see the clock or not, but you'll hear the clerk let you know that it's almost time.
Okay, perfect. You guys will know that. They'll let you know. Okay. All right, here we go.
Good evening, folks. My name is Kevin Bullard. I'm 61 years old. I'm currently been at the Interfaith Sanctuary for 2 months and actively working the recovery program that they have here, which has helped me out a lot. I've rode the bus a lot in the past when I wasn't in a homeless state, but the things that hit me is the buses, it'd be buses to run 7 days a week, with some to run till as late as midnight. Many of the homeless people do not have a vehicle, and many job openings in the Boise area are through restaurants and hotels. And weekends are almost always a must as far as, starting a job, getting your foot in the door. And more frequent runs up and down Shinden Boulevard, which I heard someone say something about the fact of connecting state up to Shinden. At Shinden, they have, it's almost non-existent, runs in the morning and runs at night, nothing in the afternoons. And more frequent runs from Napa to Caldwell, which would open up more job opportunities for us people seeking employment. Out in Napa, they've got the cheese factory, which is easy to get a job at, but if you don't have a vehicle, it's out of the question. And one thing I've noticed is the need to keeping up with this frequent cleaning. Since COVID, the cleaning has been really good and positive, but I think that needs to be kept up, on that level. A lot of people believe that, the homeless community spreads a lot of the filth and germs. There are some people that choose to stay on the street and not want assistance. Maybe they don't have the luxury of good hygiene and stuff. But with the cleaning of the buses, that helps out greatly. Here at the shelter, we're provided with hygiene, clothes,
Second warning.
Everything. I mean, you going out for a job interview, you wouldn't know that it's a homeless person, and it would be nice to have like a in-city Boise. It would be a free bus service that runs through the downtown border area. It's kind of like for tourists or people in a downtown area that need to get to one side of town to the other that aren't driving. I lived in Phoenix, Arizona, and that's what they had, and it was always utilized a lot.
Sure. We've given you a little bit extra time. I just asked you to wrap up.
Thank you very much for hearing me.
All right,
Appreciate
well, no worries, but thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
The mayor.
Yes.
My name's Cal
Mayor,
Horton.
before he leaves, I wanted to
come back,
a
Kevin.
message for him.
Hang on, he's coming right back. Kevin, Holly has a question for you.
Yeah, question.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank you for drawing that really important connection between employment opportunities for high quality employees such as yourself and where people live all around our community. I think it's really important that employers hear that too, because they can be part of the solution to our transit needs as well. So I just want to thank you very much for speaking up.
Well, thank you very much. I've got to do my part. You know, I've been given a lot, so I've got to give back, and that's what I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night. All right.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Cal Horton, and I'm a resident here at the Interfaith Sanctuary. I've been here for a little bit of time, and I've used the bus system quite a bit for the fact I don't have a license right now, but I've ridden my bike several times, or a lot of the time too. And one of the problems I have is they only have 3 little bike holders. If they could put like maybe some in the back too, you know, to where you could put more bikes on. Cause I don't mind riding a bike, but I do a lot of work out in Caldwell Napa area, you know, construction and landscaping. And lots of times, you know, if you don't get to the bus stop really, really early, you're not going to get a spot on it. And then I get kind of stuck out there and having to pay for a cab. That's kind of a concern I have is, you know, out in that Eagle area, Nampa, Caldwell area, and, you know, even farther out towards Indian Lakes and whatnot. That's, I guess that's kind of where I'm at, you know, on the business and working type aspect. I think they're doing great, you know, cleaning the buses and everything. And I'm happy to have transportation.
Thank you, Cal.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah, Councilmember Halliburton has something for you, Cal.
Yeah, just for clarification, you were saying that if you don't get there early, there's not enough room for your bicycle, and then you get out there and you don't have a way of getting to the next leg of your journey. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Is that all?
Madam Mayor.
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up for us to think about, because that's not a lot of bikes on a bus, especially for those longer hauls. Yes, Councilmember Woodings.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, thanks for that comment, Cal. Stephen from VRT, who's here, I saw him speak a couple of years ago, and he made the tremendous comment that good public transit is like infrastructure for bicyclists and pedestrians. So I think that that's a really great comment, that we need to make sure that we can, you know, have that infrastructure for bicyclists and have enough space for bicycles. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you very much.
We have one more guest that's coming up.
Great, thanks.
My name is Christopher Clausen. The only thing that I could see changing that needs help besides getting more routes, hopefully, if you guys can do that, because it makes it, just to reiterate what Kevin said, it makes it more accessible for us to be available for more jobs and makes it easier to get to and from those jobs. Would be a directory on the bus stops, because not all bus stops, I mean, all bus stops have a number you can call, but not everybody has a phone. So if they could place maps on where they go to transfer to the next buses, I think that would be a great idea.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
If you're done, if you have more, you're certainly welcome, but I will tell you that that's been a concern of mine as well. And this year, Valley Regional Transit is doing what they're analyzing is places where more information needs to be available for bus riders. So thank you for that comment, because that confirms that, in fact, that is a need. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Anything else, Christopher?
No, that's it.
Like everybody's good. Thanks for joining us. Okay, Jody, and you've got stuff to read, right, from other
Yeah,
residents?
I had 3 guests who weren't able to be here this evening, so I'll just read through them. We need buses to make bigger trips, like trips from Boise to Nampa or to Eagle and Mountain Home. Buses need to go further out because people can't take jobs with the current transportation. Housing is less expensive in Nampa and Caldwell, but if there's no transportation, that eliminates those options for us. And that's from Joel Penn. And then we need buses to run on Sundays because there are people working, and because of lack of transportation on those days, many people can't take weekend jobs. Buses need to run later because people work closing shifts, and this leaves them without transportation after work. Some of the bus routes should be nonstop, like State, Broadway, Cole, and Franklin. If a bus runs every 15 minutes, it would increase the ability to get to a job in a timely manner. If you miss a bus now, you have to wait for the next bus, and this can cause issues with being on time for appointments and work. And that's from Chris Meddy. And then the last one is, there's only one bus stop in Meridian and nothing goes out to Nampa and Caldwell. So we can't get to jobs, appointments, and housing. This causes more barriers to getting out of homelessness. And that's from Jonathan Asher. And we appreciate you guys being able to hear the voices of people that I think could be so served by your transportation plans. So again, thank you for the consideration and for giving us time to talk to you.
Jody, thank you. And please let your guests who sent letters know that their statements were, because you read them, they're reflected in the record as well. And we really appreciate their testimony.
Great. Thank you so
Mayor.
much.
And Council President Pro Tem has something.
Hi, Jody. Thank you so much for participating tonight and for helping your guests participate tonight as well. Do you feel that in some cases, the length of stay that your guests have with Interfaith is affected by not having a more a transportation system that is able to meet their needs for employment and that sort of thing? Do you feel that that's what's happening?
Absolutely. There are so many jobs that are turned down because we just can't figure out a transportation plan for them. I mean, the City of Boise work program is successful because we provide the transportation and take them to the different locations where they're needed. But transportation would in fact open up more opportunity for better paying jobs. Amazon has 2,000 jobs right now that they can't fill, and we're trying to work on a transportation plan right now with them so that we can transport our guests and then hopefully open up opportunity for housing out there. But yes, transportation is directly related to how rapidly we can get someone out of their homeless situation.
Thank you so much, Jody.
Madam Mayor.
Council President.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, Jody, and thanks for making sure your guests had an opportunity to talk to us. Really appreciate that. Much of what we heard today, the things that we can control are Sunday hours and later hours. And as you know, we've been working to expand those in the Boise system. The things we can't control are better service to Nampa, Caldwell, Meridian. And so it would be really helpful, I believe it would be really helpful for the city council members and the mayors of those 3 cities to hear these voices as well. If we're ever going to have a complete transportation system across the valley, we really need their partnership. And so to the extent that you can, if you could try to contact them and let them know these same concerns, I think it would be very helpful.
Absolutely. And, you know, just while we're all together, I mean, there is thoughts of, you know, VRT has talked about, it is about more than just the community and the council about improving transportation. It's getting those businesses that really need employment to invest in these lines. And I think that there's key partners out there that in fact could help us determine those lines. And I think Amazon is a really good example of not just transportation, but housing as well. So I love that conversation happening, you know, between leaders and new partners.
Thank you. You're absolutely correct. The business community as well. So thanks for all you're doing.
Of course. Thank you guys. Good to see you all.
See you. Good night.
Good night.
And I think we have one more person right now. His hand is up.
Madam Mayor, we actually have two more speakers.
Oh, great. Okay, two more.
We have Esther Seha, and then on deck is Jessica Elkin.
Great. Welcome, Esther.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Esther Seha. I reside at 3901 North Cambria. Tonight, I provide comments as a longtime resident of Boise, who at one point in my life relied on the bus system in 2000, 2001. The bus system was my primary mode of transportation to and from work. Today, nearly 20 years later, with the exception of the pandemic, I intermittently use the bus and have been known to purchase a year-round bus pass for my partner. I support the city's continued funding of the system. I recall attending a similar meeting last year where there was a proposal to increase the amount. For some reason, 5% is in my head, but I support the city's efforts. I do want to point out something that was mentioned in other people's comments, and that is that we do need connectivity. We need connectivity north-south. I'm not sure how we make it happen, but we've got it on Fairview, on Vista, on State Street. But what about 5 Mile, Victory, Overland, far out in those areas where some of those folks also need a reliable source of transportation? So I just ask you to think about that. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Esther, I think you've got a question or comment from Council President, so please hold on the line.
Okay.
Thanks, Esther, for being here. On that connectivity, one of the things I've been talking to our staff and to VRT staff about is reorganizing the lines in the northwest part of the city, both below the bench and above the bench, with the potential of attempting to do a north-south route all the way from Glenwood to Overland on Cole. In your experience, would that be a more valuable connection than Veterans Parkway, which would go up potentially to Fairview at Curtis? We probably ultimately need both of them, but trying to figure out what would be the best one to begin with.
Well, we definitely need something on veterans. And so 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I rode the bus from my place to work and then from my place of work downtown. And then I wanted to get to some event in Garden City. And I got downtown at 3 o'clock and I pretty much walked to the Garden City area via the Greenbelt because there was no running bus service available. So there is a need to provide service to the folks in the Garden City area by way of veterans. What I know of people that live kind of in the 5 mile south of Overland, and they will ride their bikes. And I have ridden my bike from that area to Northwest Boise, and it is a daunting task at times. But I guess I would have to look at that a little closer, Elaine.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just wanted to put that out there so people could start thinking about it. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for all of the work that you continue to do on this for as long as you have, Elaine.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Esther, thanks for joining us this evening. Good to hear from you. And next up is Jessica Elkins. Welcome.
Hi. So I have a 2-year-old who might be in the background. My name is Jessica. I live on 5000 West Mimosa Street in Boise. And my family has been fortunate enough to have great access to the Greenbelt. And so we have used that frequently. And I would say that our main use of it is bike. And so I would second the gentleman's comment earlier tonight that having more bike spots on a bus line would absolutely be beneficial. That would allow us to not only use the bus route to get to and from places that aren't as easily biked with a young toddler, but we could then use the bus to get that transportation around into some of the more distant areas where we could take a bus and then potentially bike for the rest of our destination to that area, especially as bus lines are starting to increase, where you have those longer jaunts like Esther was just mentioning. I've lived in cities where that is accessible in both Denver and in San Diego, and we absolutely enjoyed riding the public transportation and found it very valuable, and having that access to be either to bring our bikes along would be even more beneficial. And then I know this isn't directly related to the current meeting, but I would just pose the question that with interfaith relocation, it sounds like most of the transportation for the individuals who spoke tonight and the letters written was mentioning connectivity to Nampa and Caldwell. So I'd pose the question that potentially Interfaith could consider relocating to somewhere or having a second shelter to have two smaller shelters to kind of disperse the burden and, well, not the burden because they're not, people who are homeless are not a burden, but to increase the number of locations where people would potentially have more access to get themselves back on their feet and find jobs by being closer to their locations. And having that easier access to transportation that doesn't require 3 different cities coordinating their bus schedules to make it so that people can easily transit across those cities, although we would definitely use that if those are available. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
I have a question for Stephen in reflection of Jessica's comments about bikes and the prior comments we heard about bikes. Stephen, I know that we're doing a better job of counting riders now. Are we also counting bicycles that are being transported on the bus system?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, yes, with the automatic passenger counters, we can count not only when the bike rack itself is deployed, but the number of bikes that are on the rack. So we can find areas that have overloads on from a bike perspective.
That's great, thank you.
And Jessica, if you're still with us, thanks for calling in. And it was great to hear your kiddo in the background, actually. I'm glad that was.
Thank you. We were actually at a city council meeting, I think a couple of years ago now, and he was an infant, and you guys were gracious enough to let me speak early because he was just chatting away during that time as well. So I appreciate your patience as always with kiddos.
I love that he's growing up engaged in his community.
He is, yeah. And he's met Jimmy many times at Boise Bicycle Projects, the bike giveaways. He's done it every year he's been alive. So yeah, we definitely enjoy engaging him in part of the city, and we enjoy living in Boise and making ourselves part of the community here tremendously. And so having access to great transportation and support across the board from the city is an incredible thing. So thank you.
Jessica, thank you. Have a great night. Right. And Jessica was the last person signed up to testify this evening. So before what I think, this isn't, there's no action taken tonight, but my understanding is that they'll likely will want to have some conversation about what a potential resolution looks like. But before that, does any member of the council have questions for Stephen as follow-up to anything heard, or for Bree or Karen?
Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you. Stephen, I just had a quick question about the bicycle situation. When you said that there is a system in place that will count how many folks are using the rack, and you said overload, does that just mean they're all used up, or are people finding another way to take their bike with them? Just wanted to clarify that a little bit.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, yes, when I said overload, I just meant when there would be too many bikes for the racks. We don't have people bringing bikes onto the bus or trying to ride the racks. That would be bad.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
while we're on the bicycle issue, Stephen, I've had some employees who've worked over in Nampa before, and sometimes they would come in and they would have to leave their bike basically at the bus stop, in Nampa, because the bike rack was full. In a couple of circumstances, I think people ended up getting their bicycles stolen by the time that they got back, to the spot, if they had to leave them. I don't know if it's possible to put more than three bikes on the bus, if there's other solutions that other cities are seeing, whether they're additional racks or if they're inside storage. But I was wondering if you might be able to speak to if you've seen any larger capacity bike racks, just because I know that there's only so much you can do, right, as far as being able to load bikes on there. So I didn't know if you have any thoughts or comments there.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, it's hard. I mean, we went from 2 racks to 3 racks, which is good, but I am not aware of any racks that get bigger than 3. It gets challenging if you're going to go to an outside rack that has more than that in terms of the additional length that it puts on the end of the bus. So this is a difficult challenge where how do you accommodate bikes on the bus itself? The only other solution as far as on the bus transportation that I've seen is an example actually in north of Seattle, Everett area. They have bus rapid transit vehicles. So these are articulated coaches, longer coaches. They're 60-foot coaches, which just makes more space on the inside. And I've seen integrated bike racks in the back of those where you'd actually bring the bike onto the bus and hang it on the inside of the vehicle. But even there, I think so maybe it gets you 4 bikes. And that's on a coach that's twice as big as the current one. So the math works out that if you're talking about a large percentage of bikers trying to get on a bus, the way to solve that problem is to figure out how you can have a bike on both ends of the bus or both ends of the trip, as opposed to carrying the bike with you through the trip. So that's where we would look at things like bike racks at the bus stops, and facilitating things like bike share particularly in the downtown areas where they might be able to ride their bike to one end of the trip and then use a bike share on the other end of the trip. We also have bike storage at Main Street Station to help facilitate that as well. But long term, to me, those are the only viable options to accommodate a large percentage of bike transit commuters or travelers.
And Madam Mayor, just one follow-up question.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. As far as not allowing bicycles on the bus, are there some bicycles that are allowed, whether they're folding bikes, Brompton bikes, your kind of more specialized ones that are sometimes are allowed to be taken into other locations like restaurants and stuff? I know that there's some cleanliness issues, but I'm wondering if there's any policies around certain types of bikes that might be certified. Also, I want to note that doesn't necessarily solve problems for people who may be lower income, as those bicycles are generally expensive. But I'm curious if there are any policies there.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, to be honest, I don't know that there are any policies that call out bikes to say that they're prohibited on the bus. The problem is just the size of we don't have people bringing things that large, whether they're a bike or anything else, onto the bus. So if you have a folding bike that actually can compress down to a size that you can carry it in your lap, that kind of space, then it's there. I don't think that there's a policy that says bikes can't come on the bus. So even if it's folding, it can't come on the bus. I had a colleague that was commuting with a foldable bike on one of our vehicles.
So I just have a follow-up question on that. Stephen, is there language that allows the bus driver to use his or her discretion in allowing buses onto the bus? That's how they do it in Denver and Salt Lake when the racks are full.
Madam Mayor, I don't know. I don't know how those policies might be written. We can look into that.
Yeah, that's something I think we ought to look into.
Madam Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Stephen, since we're doing spacing and we're still deferring to the needs of COVID, what does that look like right now on the bus? Since we're not operating as usual, where we've got masking and spacing going on, what does that look like on the bus now?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Sanchez, I believe what you're asking about is what does the load of the bus look like right now? How many people are on the bus? And because in terms of general operations, we're more or less operating as we did before. We do require masks, but I'm trying to think what our policy is. Like, I don't think we're turning anybody away, for example, if they're trying to get on the bus. I don't think we have instances where it's too full to like allow more people onto the bus. I think that's the best answer I can give you right now.
Follow up, Madam Mayor. The reason I'm asking, Stephen, is I know when you presented earlier, you talked about how the 2019 and the 2020 data collection methods are different because we've got a more accurate count in 2020 than we did in 2019. I'm wondering if there's a possibility for us to try out having bicycles on the bus at this time, just to see how it works, since we're being innovative these days, and to do some data collection and see how that works. Maybe that increases our ridership. Just a thought.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Sanchez, thank you for the comment. There are generally speaking would be safety concerns about having a larger thing on the bus.
No need to commit this evening. What I'd recommend.
Okay, thank
you. But I hope this shows the public that we learn things when we hear from folks of all walks of life, and there were a couple nuggets of really important information, I think, that we all heard tonight as we think about how we make these investments moving forward, and then work as partners with this Valley Regional Transit to serve the community. What I think we ought to do is, there are a couple questions before us this evening that the public ought to hear us and council particularly weigh in on, so that in the coming month we can come back with a resolution to move this budget item forward. This is one of our largest budget items, as we saw, if we looked at VRT as a department, as we saw in Bree and Karen's presentation, it's right up there with one of our larger kind of budget buckets or departments. And so making sure that we are making investments that are fiscally sound, linking the investments to the importance of affordable housing and economic opportunity, and then taking advantage of times like these when we have the opportunity with last year's CARES fundings and others to really be to make headway in ways that we haven't in so long on particular corridors is an important thing for us to weigh. And as a city, we want to be able to leverage our investments to see additional investment come behind it, to make it possible to grow out some of these services like State Street. So that's something to discuss and consider including in a resolution. I know our residents, expect us to make sound fiscal investments that are transparent and conservative in nature with impact. And so figuring out how, as a council and as a city, we make sure that we're able to provide that to our residents is important. With the long-term goal of building both within our community and then our region a functioning transportation system at this really important time, is what we're trying to do and want to be able to do with the money that you all are considering whether or not to allocate and how. And so I'd encourage us to have that conversation at this time so that our team can take what they heard from the public, take what they hear from you, and then work on in the next couple of weeks together with leadership but also come back to you with a resolution that would memorialize our intent.
Madam Mayor, I guess I'll kick it off. First of all, I want to thank everyone who testified tonight. Those of you, if any of you are still listening, really helpful, as you said, to hear from members of the public and learn from them the things that they encounter using this system. In terms of our priorities, you've heard from me already tonight that I've long believed that getting State Street to a point where we can show people what good transit looks like is an important factor. We've heard tonight that's great, and we should continue to do that. At the same time, we think about how to build connectivity in the system. Given that we've chosen the 3 best-in-class routes, Vista, Fairview, and State Street, I think it is good policy at this point to continue down the route that we're on, which is to improve services on Fairview next. But I think tonight points out that at the same time, while we're in this year of planning, we can begin thinking about if we were able to expand services following this year, not in this next year, but in the years following that, what would it look like? What would be the highest priority? I know that VRT has some resources available that would potentially help us do that. They have a software package called Remix, and they're recently acquiring new kind of route match software so that we can understand more easily how to be efficient with dispatching. And so the first 2 priorities, I think, are pretty easy. The transparency one is difficult, not because none of us want to be transparent, but because it's hard to understand how to take a system like the city budget and then have another system like the VRT budget process that are disparate and collect different information, fundamentally different information, and blend them in such a way that we can both get from that what's the best information that will ensure that we're comfortable, our citizens are comfortable, that we're spending money in the right place and getting the most out of it, while not putting too big a burden on our partner at VRT to figure out how to bring that to pass. So I'm not sure I have a good answer on that, except to say that this is going to be a process, and what I'd like to see is that we identify in this particular resolution the steps we're going to take this year toward that process, and also identify the end goal, recognizing we may not get quite to the end goal this year, but we'll identify the steps along the way we need to take this year to get toward that. So for me, that transparency would be continuing to talk to VRT in the next couple of weeks about what are those first steps, what's the end look like, and what are we going to do this year to get toward it.
Madam Mayor. Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to thank all the folks that were able to speak tonight. The high caliber comments that were received from each and every one of them was very valuable to me and very much appreciated. And I want to thank Stephen for being on the whole call, the meeting the entire time, because I think there was quite a few nuggets that came out of that. And then some were new to me. We had a great discussion on the bikes in particular, and I learned quite a bit from that. I support our transport liaison, our guru, Council President Clegg, who I lean on to lead us on the transportation side of things. And I support all the comments that you mentioned, Council President Clegg. And I think it's a good direction. I certainly spend most of my time on Fairview and agree with the comments that were made by one of the citizens and Councilmember Clegg in terms of that being a potential high priority area to focus on even more in the future. It's certainly a thriving street, and I could see the potential for more investment there going forward.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Like my fellow council members, I really appreciate everybody's comments tonight. I love it when people bring ideas to the table, and we don't always see that, so that's always exciting to see. I think the last time that I testified at City Council before I was elected was at this meeting, and this was one of the first things that I got to be a part of last year. So it's exciting to be here tonight, still looking at this. The only thing that I would have to add is I still think looking at the data about the folks who are continuing to use public transit right now more than ever, and the folks who have the ability to be working at home, and the folks who don't have the ability to be working at home, and kind of looking at the statistics of when people are using the bus, I do think that there needs to be some prioritization of how we can make sure that we're continuing to serve the folks who are using the bus every single day during the pandemic and who lack the other transportation options, as well as really looking at our strategic long-term goals of expanding services in the areas that we've already talked about. So that would be my extra note, is that we do put some consideration to if there are potential things that we can do to elevate the effectiveness during this time when there are some folks who are still using it for all their essential travel.
Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to echo Councilmember Halliburton's statement. I for sure think that we need to prioritize those folks who really don't have a choice as to whether or not they use the bus. So I think anything we can do to improve services to them should absolutely be at the top of our list, because I think for the longest time it's been folks who have really relied on those services. Imperfect as they are, it's better than nothing. But we also have folks who are privileged enough to be in a position where they can exercise their values and choose that alternative form of transportation rather than use their vehicle. And what I also think is to also keep in mind that we need to have an investment where we're bringing the rest of us along. So I very much appreciate Council President Clegg talking about during our work session, wanting to have those bus stops be an opportunity for us to embrace the arts, because, you know, for those of us who take in the world visually, you know, when you see something that grabs your eye, you pay attention to it. And I think once we start seeing more bus stops that have presence to them, may even be like those beautiful pieces of art we see on Vista, it starts to send a message to the rest of the community that we as a city take it seriously and we're willing to invest in that type of infrastructure. So those are my 2 cents.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I definitely want to underline a lot of what my fellow council members have already said, and just add a little something that we heard from several folks tonight, which is the importance of our having a solid public transit system as part of our local economy. And that's for both our workers and our employers. So I'm hoping that going forward, there can be, I mean, I really appreciate Bree being here. I think it would be great to also bring in our economic development folks and make sure that we're really talking about this as an ecosystem of transportation so that people can get to the places they need to be, so that they can get out of homelessness, so that they can seek better opportunities for their families. And so I would like to see that conversation happening, and that combination of things being talked about going forward.
Very good points and things to be thinking about. And Council President, you're unmuted. I don't see anybody else.
Thank you. It looks like maybe everyone else has spoken. Just to clarify, you know, we set a parameter in 2019 that we would do 6% of property tax collections, no less than. This year, I think defining that is going to be somewhat challenging given the governor's rebate. And so I would like to say that I think our starting point is where we were last year, but within that starting point, identifying what of those monies is going directly to operations, being clear about what's going to other things and what those other things are. We've got a lot of things happening right now with the transportation operations analysis, with the bus stop typology planning, with the planning to do grant work or apply for grants. And so again, clearly identifying who's working on all of those, what the resources are at the city, what the resources are at Valley Regional Transit toward those, so that going forward, we can make that work easier, hopefully. I think the last piece for me is as Valley Regional Transit looks to build their own resilience and their own base operating going forward, that we identify what of the assets that they own need replaced on a regular schedule, what might be behind schedule, and identifying a clear plan for how we're going to take care of those. I think between all of that and the things that we've outlined tonight that we want to see go forward in our work, there's going to be plenty of work for everyone, but I think that will just solidify the basis that we've been working on with Valley Regional Transit and allow them, frankly, the capacity to do the other things they need to do to grow into this regional system that we're hearing everyone say that we need. So hopefully that's direction to Bree, and if necessary, we can clarify as the draft comes along.
That sounds great. I'm going to look to staff now and ask if you've gotten enough clarity to work on something that we can review.
Sure. I think what I'm hearing is a resolution that would have some requirements for steps to work towards transparency.
As well as the base, or
Base
last year's
funding.
costs, the starting point for, I wrote down last year's cost as starting point for this year's costs. Detail regarding what goes to operations and what then goes to priority and other routes, as well as some clarity and responsibility and accountability around grants applications, leverage of our dollars for additional dollars to build out a system such as State Street, and then the potential shovel-worthy project that we could potentially submit.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I think I have it.
Was that it, Council President?
Thank you. You caught some of the things from the earlier conversation as well. That's great.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Would it be possible for us to add something about how we can, I think somebody, at least one person who testified tonight talked about us renewing conversations with other cities in VRT about them increasing their contribution.
I'd recommend on that one, appreciate the suggestion, that it not be tied to our resolution on what we will fund, but that the council president and I, as members of the VRT board, working with Karen and Bree on our staff, them working with VRT staff, like provide some support, encouragement, and expectation that whether it be cities or new partnerships with businesses are found. And I think that there's potential to do that, but it ought to stay separate from our own funding decision.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, just to go a little bit further on that, just information for Councilmember Sanchez. In the last 3 meetings at VRT's executive board, the executive committees really dug into how to begin those regional conversations and how to make them more fruitful. And Stevens presented yesterday, actually, sort of the outcome of those conversations and a schedule of how we would convene some of those conversations the appropriate time to do it so that we're not in the middle of when VRT is doing route changes, but that we're doing it at a time of year that it can be considered for those route changes later. So I really appreciate that suggestion. Just a little note that a bit of that has already begun. It has a long way to go, but I think there is interest.
Madam Mayor, members of council, staff will work with VRT to figure out what those base costs are so we can build that into the resolution.
Excellent. Thank you. I want to thank everybody that showed up online tonight to testify on this topic. We're going to take a quick break before we move on to the next matter, which is CAR 20-19 at 1522 State Street.
Madam Mayor, I'd also like to thank Stephen, if I could. I thought he did a great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for adding that in there. Thank you, Stephen. Good to see you. So we'll be back in 5-6 minutes. I skipped ahead to the next page, as I'm sometimes known to do. We're picking up SOS 21-1 at 800 Park Hill Drive first. I think. Are they here? Great, okay. All right, welcome back, Cody. This is SOS 21-1 on Park Hill Drive. So for this, we'll hear from Cody for the city. Eric, is it Lyle or Leal as an applicant? Highlands is the Neighborhood Association on record, so let us know if you're here. We're not expecting that. Nobody signed up to testify in advance. So if you're here for this item, just raise your little Zoom hand. And once we've gone through staff and the applicant's reports and questions from council, we'll move into calling on anybody for this application or others. You can always raise your hand if you didn't sign up. Great, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. This item is a request to vacate a plat note related to specific setbacks for a parcel addressed at 800 West Park Hill Drive. For those unfamiliar with the address, the site is located just northeast of the Hill Road and 15th Street intersection. The purpose of the request is to accommodate construction of a new single-family home on a vacant parcel. That parcel is comprised of portions of lots 13 and 15 of the Camelback subdivision that was platted back in 1963. The plat included an oddly configured setback along the front of the lot lines in this older subdivision, and probably did make sense for some of the other lots, but at the end of this cul-de-sac, it doesn't appear to have really taken into account the specific topography of the property. As you can see, the slope actually drops off quite dramatically towards the back of the parcel. Rather than the oddly configured setback at the front, the applicant would like it reduced. It was originally suggested simply to the 20-foot setback that's allowed in the underlying zone. We see and continue to see no reason not to support the request. Reducing that setback will allow construction to occur while significantly reducing the amount of grading required and have no measurable impact on other properties in the area. Until today, we were only aware of support for the proposal. In fact, Fire commented that placing the home up closer on the lot would be safer from their perspective. I would note we did receive a letter late today, not in opposition to the proposal, but asking that a 25-foot setback be maintained along the front or kind of parallel to that cul-de-sac. The applicant has agreed to that. So we are asking that you approve the vacation of the plat note this evening and simply add that 25-foot setback as a condition of approval. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Cody. Any questions for Cody? Nope, looks like you're in the clear for the moment. How about Eric Lyle? Is it Lyle? Sorry, Eric.
That's correct.
Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, we understand that one of our neighbors put in a request for a 25-foot setback, and that's completely fine with us. Our current plan is for a 25-foot setback, and we'd be completely happy to comply with that.
Eric, are you able to hear me?
Yep, are you there?
There's some of us that are just struggling to hear you, so I'd ask that move the phone closer or do something so that you're clear for the record as well.
Can you hear me any better right now?
A tiny bit, but not a lot. And I'm noticing everybody, all the council members on Zoom at least are really trying to hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to mess with my settings to increase my volume.
That's a bit better.
Okay, I'll try to speak up into my microphone, so sorry.
Do whatever you're doing now.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for the time, everybody. Yeah, we had put in a proposal. I think actually on my original proposal, it actually set a 25-foot setback. And we're completely happy to comply with our neighbor's request for a 25-foot setback following the curvature of the cul-de-sac. So if you guys are agreeable to those terms, we would be very happy to comply with those as well.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. It looks like Councilman Bajent might have something for you.
Madam Mayor, no question. I just wanted to observe how wonderful it is when an applicant receives feedback from the neighbors, looks at the plans, says, yeah, this isn't a problem. I'm happy to do this. Thank you very much. Thank you to the neighbors for your input. But it's just so refreshing to see that. And I know I really appreciate it. And I'm sure my colleagues do too.
Yeah, anytime. And yeah, thanks for all you guys do. I appreciate you taking the time to hear this this change request. So I appreciate it.
Thanks, Eric.
Absolutely. Thank
All
you.
right. Do we have anybody from Highlands?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, anybody that has raised their hand to testify?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so nobody is here to testify on this item. The neighborhood association is here. It looked as though there were no further questions for staff or the applicant. Nope. All right, we'll go ahead and close this hearing and the matter is before you.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move to approve the request, the vacation of plat note for a setback located on 0.23 acres on portions of lot 13 and 15 of Camel's Back subdivision in residential 1B single family residential zone, SOS 21-1 at 800 West Park Hill Drive.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? All right, clerk, will you call the roll?
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Madam Mayor, just briefly, I assume everyone seemed in agreement that to add the condition on the 25-foot.
Oh, yeah.
The 25-foot setback.
Yes, I'm given the
Thank you.
vote and the
Thank
discussion.
you.
That was the intent of the motion.
I forgot to say as presented by staff. Thank you, Cody.
Next up is CAR 20-19 at 1522 West State Street. So Cody, you're back up. And then we have the applicant Matthew Cameron of Cameron Investments and Tom Sheldon from GGLO. The neighborhood association, if you're here, is North End on record, given the space. And then we do have a group of you that are signed up to testify. I've got your names. I'll call you through. And if I don't call your name and you're here to talk, just raise your hand.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. This is a request to rezone 0.36 acres from PCDD to C5DD, or pedestrian commercial with downtown design review, to the central business district with downtown design review. The property is located on the northeast corner of State and 16th Street, both arterial roadways. The purpose of the rezone request is to accommodate a mixed-use development comprised primarily of residential uses, or residential. I'll get into the details in a moment. As it relates to the rezone, the property is in the downtown planning area and the West Side Downtown Urban Renewal District. It's designated downtown mixed use on the land use map of Blueprint Boise. And given that designation, there are a number of potentially appropriate zoning districts. The C5, though, has been recognized as an appropriate zone to facilitate housing in and around downtown for years. The code was actually amended back in 2005 with the specific purpose of accommodating additional housing. The amendment allowed individual sites like this located in an urban renewal district to be rezoned. The caveat with that, though, was that these requests were to include a development agreement to ensure compatibility with surrounding development. Another example of where this was used, I would suggest successfully, was the Jefferson building over at 4th and Jefferson. So like that application, this request does include a development agreement. The agreement ties development of the property to the building in concept you see on the screen. It's a six-story building that includes approximately 4,000 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor at the corner, with parking provided in a portion of the ground floor and then below grade. Parking is to be accessed via right-in, right-out entrance on State Street and a two-way entrance on 16th. The upper 5 floors of the project will include approximately 105 dwelling units. Of those units, the applicant has agreed to maintain at least 5% at 80 to 100% AMI for a period of 5 years. With a rezone like this to C5, the primary concern would be the unlimited height limit allowed in the C5 zone. The development agreement does cap the height allowance at 85 feet. I would also note that it requires the building to step down to 4 stories on the northern boundary and then 5 to the east. From our perspective, that appropriately concentrates the bulk of the project at the corner of these 2 arterial roadways. The result is a nice transition to adjoining properties and the surrounding neighborhood. As you saw in the record, the commission did hear a mix of opposition and support for the project. Those in opposition were concerned primarily with the height and potentially the increase in traffic. Those in support recognized the benefits of providing additional housing in this location. As you saw, ultimately, the commission found the request consistent with the approval criteria. The rezone with development agreement will allow a site consumed predominantly by paving to be replaced with a mixed-use building with more than 100 new homes within walking distance of countless services and amenities and along a bus route that you heard quite a bit about this evening. As detailed in the packet, the rezone is supported by numerous elements of the comprehensive plan, and from the commission's perspective is in the best interest of the community. So with that, we are recommending approval of the rezone this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Cody. Any questions for Cody?
Madam Mayor.
Was that Councilmember Halliburton?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Cody, that stretch right there kind of has a funky southbound bike lane on the left-hand side. And from what I could tell, it looks like there's only one exit coming out of the building there. And I guess I just wanted to double check and make sure that it's not adding any sort of weird undue burden to a pretty prominent bike lane that goes from north to south.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, the project includes just the two access points located, as we would encourage, as far away from the intersection really as possible. You know, I would say that replaces this corner, which largely functions as almost one large curb cut around the intersection. So in terms of conflicts with the bike lane, I think maximizing that offset from the intersection is probably about the best we could do.
Perfect, Cody. I just wanted to make sure that I was looking at that correctly.
Anything else?
Madam Mayor, this is Councilmember Clegg.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, Cody. I had a similar question. The two-way entrance into the parking garage will occur about where the green line is on the bike lane. And I just wanted to ensure that that entrance will include mirrors for the cars so that they can see, especially to the north down the bike lane, and ensure that they can see a bike coming as they exit.
Madam Mayor,
I'll bring that up now and get a comment from the developer if they have any.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, sorry to interrupt there. Yes, the project will still be required to go through design review, so we can certainly provide them with that direction this evening. And as you said, let the applicant kind of elaborate on their plans there.
Great. Well, I see Tom. Tom, are you speaking tonight alone, or is there somebody else that we should pull up?
The developer applicant, Matthew Clark, I don't know if you're on, but he wanted to do an introduction, and then I was going to kind of go over our thought process on our proposal.
Great. It sounds like we pulled Matthew up as well. I just can't see. Yes. There you go. Oh, hey there. Good to see you.
Hi, good to see you.
Sorry, I was thinking it was you, but this paper here says Cameron, but.
Oh yeah, middle name.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Good to see you, Matthew.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Matthew Cameron Clark. I rent my home at 406 West Sherman Street. And this is actually my first housing development. So I'm very excited to be joining you tonight, working toward providing some much needed housing for Boise. Although I'm new to this pursuit, I'm fortunate to have partners and collaborators on this project who have decades of experience. And we believe that with your support, we can build something really special and clearly needed in the city. I'm a Boise native, born right downtown at St. Luke's, and I have a deep affection for this city, for our downtown, and for the North End in particular, where I've lived most of my adult life. As some of you know, I spent 25 years in the nonprofit professional theater world and was surrounded by extraordinary people there who work very hard to make Boise a more interesting, diverse, and vibrant place to live, all while making a very modest living. These artists and technicians, along with Boise's restaurant workers, grocery store employees, educators, healthcare workers, delivery drivers, and many others make up a workforce that's struggling to find affordable and livable housing close enough to the walkable heart of the city. We believe that adding to the inventory of available units in the right locations is the best way to address this issue. So in the summer of 2019, we began looking for an appropriate site to build some beautiful, new, efficient apartments with walkability, affordability, and livability as our top priorities. In addition to our firsthand knowledge of the neighborhood, we've used Blueprint Boise and a number of other plans, including transit and bicycle access, as reference to identify what we believe is an ideal location at the corner of 16th and State. It's right on the State Street Transit corridor that's been discussed tonight. There will, by the way, be a bicycle storage and repair room in the building. Groceries, pharmacies, cafes, restaurants, postal services, medical services, salons, brew pubs, and banks aren't just in the neighborhood, they're all within 1 or 2 blocks of this site. I mean, it's perfectly centered between Jeanju and Fancy Freeze. It's a really good spot. So it's in that transition zone between the North End and the downtown core, right at the edge of the downtown mixed use area as designated in Boise's comprehensive plan. So this project is not million-dollar condos, it's workforce housing. The design has evolved over time in response to conversations we've had with the community, including neighbors who are renters, owners, businesses, and the North End Neighborhood Association. This design adds much needed housing density while stepping down the height and massing of the building to blend in with the surrounding neighborhood, including the 5-story apartment building 1 block north at the corner of 16th and Franklin. But we've also stayed committed to the open livability of our design, including high ceilings and big windows that make a real difference in the quality of life. If you've ever lived in a studio apartment that didn't prioritize light and air, you know what I mean. These workforce units are going to be beautiful. So with the zoning adjustment we're asking for tonight, including the strict limitations outlined in our development agreement, we can make a meaningful contribution to Boise's housing needs in a location with all the necessary services accessible on foot. To give you a better idea of why this is an ideal site for this building, I want to introduce our architect for the project, Tom Sheldon of GGLO.
Can I share my screen? Is that?
You should be able to.
Okay, let's see. Let's go with.
He's able to share a screen. Yeah.
Let's see. Do you see the image?
No, not yet.
Can you see it yet?
No. Clerk, are you able to provide any guidance?
Let's try this again. Let's try this here. Screen 1.
Oh, it's working.
Oh, darn it. I just stopped it. Give me a second.
Oh, we can see it. Tom, we can see it.
Oh, okay. Can you see the full screen or the?
See it, and we can see your notes for your presentation. I mean, it's if you don't want us to, you might want to put it in slide mode or something, but it's totally okay because it works.
Okay, I'm in slide mode. Do you see my notes still?
We can see everything. It's good.
Well, I want to do this right, so give me a moment here.
I wonder, that's an interesting question. Since you're sharing your screen, we can probably only see what you're saying on your screen. I don't know if there's a way for you to make it a slideshow for us and the whole shebang for you.
Madam Mayor, I think if Tom hits, the far right one, try that one. No.
Can you see now? Well, let's
Well,
do this.
that works. Now we only see part of it.
Yeah. So, hello, Madam Mayor and Boise City Council members. I'm Tom Sheldon. I'm a principal at GGLO, 1199 Shoreline Drive. And actually we'll be moving our office right across from C.W. Moore Park, and hopefully we can move in within the end of the year, and looking forward to that, especially next to Chip cookies there. So most of the information that you will see, you already have in your package. So I thought what I'd do is I'd go over those briefly, but I also want to kind of dig into our thought process that Matthew alluded to. Some of the first things we do when we look at sites is we go into Blueprint Boise. That's the very first thing we do. And these are some of the goals that we found in Blueprint Boise that we would like to achieve and solve for the city of Boise. We do know that anytime you do a zoning rezone, that it has to benefit the city first and foremost, and that's why we go into Blueprint Boise. So under the Neighborhood Activity Center number 1, the most important thing is that they want to meet most daily needs within walking distance. Regarding workforce housing, within mixed-use activity centers and other areas that may be readily available, served by transit, and that's the big issue here. Regarding zoning updates, remove barriers, particularly in the downtown mixed-use zone. Traffic is always a big deal, not only on State Street, but in the city. And our goal is to encourage compact developments as a means to reducing vehicle trips. And then encourage redevelopments in identified brownfield sites. For housing, incorporate high-density housing in existing or planned transit access areas. And then concentrate your highest density uses within a quarter mile of transit stops. Locate high density residential, particularly in areas of existing and planned transit services. You can see kind of a trend here. And workforce housing, promote development of housing affordable to people within downtown. Since our planning and zoning meeting, the North End Neighborhood Plan was issued January 26th, and in there they acknowledged the downtown mixed use designation. And they said that Marketplace and 17th and State, which is across the street for us in that area, might support more intense development that is currently existing. They also listed potential activity centers and 5 potential activity centers. And they said that that includes the center at 17th and State. When we do these overlay analysis, the first thing we do, of course, is we go into Blueprint Boise and we try to analyze the site, particular in this area. But first of all, the Boise staff report, and I'll read, this is exactly where the development code envisions a C5 zone to occur with a development agreement. In particular, the subject property is located within the West Side Downtown Urban Renewal District, the downtown planning area, and it is the comprehensive plan and rezone is supported by multiple policies in the comprehensive plan, which I just listed. So there was concern that our rezone would cause precedent in other areas in this area. And that's why we do this overlay analysis to actually show you that we have a really limited area that we are proposing, where our proposal will be listed. So as you can see here, we're in the Blueprint Boise downtown planning area. If you overlay the downtown mixed use zone, you can see that the site gets a little smaller. If you overlay the State Street priority area for the TOD policy guidelines, it's, as you can see, along State Street. We're actually within a 5-minute walk of a TOD station. It's actually a secondary TOD station right across the street. And then we're actually listed in Blueprint Boise as a brownfield site for development. And you can see this kind of oddly shaped area, which is considered brownfield sites. And that's on page 283. And then we're in the West Side Urban Renewal District. Oops, I gotta move this here. the staff report says the rezone is consistent with the standards of approval. It is precisely the location close to downtown or additional housing should be accommodated. And we'd like to say we're, hold on, we're stuck here. We are providing compact development of means of reducing traffic and vehicle trips. We're providing higher density housing along a transit corridor. We're providing housing affordable for people working in downtown. We're providing housing within walking distance of daily services. We're providing housing where employment is located. And we're providing a development that meets many of Blueprint Boise's goals. So with that, I can stand for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Are there questions for Tom or Matthew?
Madam Mayor.
Sure.
I had a question about the brownfield status. Because it's been a gas station, is that why it's brownfield, and is it going to require some remediation at that site?
Well, brownfield in the definition of Blueprint Boise has kind of a broad range of definition. It's underutilized sites like parking lots, gas stations, things that are not considered urban. But also the site is, we're finding out, a brownfield site with some contaminated soils, which would require us to clean up or remediate or in some manner.
Excellent. Thank you for answering it in both ways. I appreciate it.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Sheldon. Can you tell us a little bit about what the price ranges are on these housing units? I think it's exciting that we're going to have housing within walking distance to so many amenities, including workplaces. But could you tell us a little bit about what that's going to look like for folks who are considering looking for housing?
Maybe I can do is describe the units, and then Matthew, maybe you can describe, actually answer the question. We're providing efficiency units there, but they are tall. So there's one thing about a studio apartment, but if you don't have a lot of light and air, they become kind of dreary. So as you can see, we have taller floor to floor heights with lots of light coming in, floor to ceiling lights with little balconies. Because of their little smaller, they fall into the more affordable realm. So Matthew, I don't know if you want to answer any specific regarding the numbers.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's an evolving thing for sure, but the goal and sort of draft pro forma for this is in that sort of 80 to 100% AMI range. You know, the $1,000 to $1,300 apartment right here in this location. So we're not committed to those numbers yet. There are a lot of variables that have to make all of the numbers work. We don't have all construction numbers and all of that. But that's where the market is. And what we're really doing by committing to these smaller units is committing to that lower end price point in for apartments of this, you know, that are brand new.
We might want to mention though that we are providing 5%.
Yeah, the development agreement includes, I mean, the big picture goal is to provide a number of units that are affordable and workforce housing, but we, as part of a guarantee toward that end, there are units in there that are not just going to be in that price range, but income restricted as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. A couple of questions. So as I look at the staff report from ACHD, it projects that there will be, it looks like right around 600 average daily trips for the uses that you've identified because, you know, multifamily and actually in your case, I think with the smaller units, it'll probably be a little bit lower than that. I know we've had some concern about traffic. What I could find of a convenience store and gas station with the 4 pumps that this one has, that would generate probably upwards of 1,500 trips per day. I wondered if you had done that similar analysis. I couldn't find it anywhere in the staff report, but I think as we talk about traffic with these kinds of developments, we need to get a little more sophisticated about what we're talking about. We've got a use there today that's already generating trips, and the use you're proposing, it looks like to me, will generate fewer trips.
We believe
Yeah,
that's the case. Yeah. Go ahead, Tom, if you want.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. 600 seems a lot to me, given that we're right on a transit line and we're going to be supporting and pushing the residents to use transit. We are in a parking zone that I think it's P3 that requires 0.7 stalls per unit. So we're only looking at maximum of 70 stalls. But you know, we're also looking at possibly doing less if the city would allow us, because of the emphasis on transit there. So, and you're correct. We are reducing the traffic by 1/3. And one thing I want to note is we did talk to ACHD about the right in and right out on State Street. And they did mention that there may be only a left in, left out on 16th, as opposed to 2A. That's something they want to reserve. And of course, we have to follow their guidelines. And that'll certainly help with the bike lane.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to ask about that as well. So whatever you do, if there are folks coming out there, we need to make sure that they can see up the bike lane with a mirror or something.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So last question. I know that you've identified the 5 units for affordability. Are you going to accept vouchers on the rest of the units, or at least a certain number of vouchers if folks who are voucher holders apply?
I can't actually answer that yet. I don't know. I'm still on the learning curve of how those vouchers and the affordability caps work. But it's part of the intent of the project. So we're definitely going to lean into creating opportunity.
I would encourage you to look into them. They do impose a bit of a management struggle. They're you know, compliance issues, but once you learn it, it's really not that hard.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, thank you both. Let's go ahead and see if we've got a couple people signed up to testify. First off is the North End Neighborhood Association here. Nope. Okay. Rory Hester, I saw you pop in for a moment. I think you're probably still on the line. And folks, just a reminder, you don't need to give us your address, and we're going to collect those. The clerk is collecting those as you register for the Zoom. That way you don't have to live stream where you're calling from. Go ahead, Rory.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome back.
Oh, okay. Hey, thank you. This is the reason I'm here tonight. Okay, so I got something written out. Good evening. I'm Rory Hester from Boise, and I'm broadcasting from my lovely hotel room in West Palm Beach. After working a 12-hour shift, it's late here, and it's not nearly as glamorous as it seems. First, my background, I moved to Collister neighborhood in Boise almost exactly 10 years ago after retiring from the Air Force. Love Boise, greatest city in the United States. And I know for sure because I spend 220 days a year traveling in all sorts of other cities, and they don't compare. Unfortunately, so many people agreed with me that, you know, we got more people moving in and, you know, we can't keep up with the demand for housing. And this is probably the part I should tell you that I have a lot of kids, like more than you can count on one hand. So I don't want to get into details, but I have a lot of kids. And let's just say that last year I was pretty relieved when all of our kids finally got out of the house and we were empty nesters, and it was glorious. You know, we're a working class family. My wife and my 2 daughters work at their uncle's restaurant. One goes to CWI to study mechatronics. You know, we are the essence of Boise's workforce. But, after they moved out, leases, especially the last 2 years, leases started going up. $1,000 apartments became $1,200 apartments. $1,200 apartments became $1,400 apartments. You guys all know the numbers. 2 years ago, my daughters could afford, with roommates to live on their own, but it finally got too much for them. And then all of a sudden, last year, one came home, then another come home, then another came home. And now all of a sudden I've lost my freedom. I've got 3 adult daughters back living with me. I love them, but I would gladly sacrifice the enormous equity I have in my house to get rid of them. And the only way I'm going to do that is if we build more housing in Boise. But in order to do that, we have to build more housing. And this project is exactly the type of housing that I support. It's on State Street, it's by transportation, it's close to restaurants, it's close to downtown, close to jobs, close to shops, and let's be honest, it's close to the bars. I like it so much, I'm sort of jealous of it because I wish they'd build stuff like this down on my end of State Street down west, which I'm sure we're going to talk about that in the months to come. And on a side note, Tom, once you have built this, if you want, I can point you to some parcels further west that would be great for housing developments. So finally, I just want to urge the city council, the mayor, whoever is going to say yes, to please approve this, because quite frankly, I need my freedom back and my kids need apartments and every little bit helps. Thank you for your time.
Rory, thanks so much for sharing a very personal take on the need for housing that we have right now in our community, and good to see you.
Thank you. Nice meeting you. And sorry about, never mind, I won't say you.
No, you're good. All right, next up is Darby Webb.
Hello, Madam Mayor and Boise City Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is Dr. Darby Webb. I've lived up on 16th Street, just north of the proposed area for the past 17 years. My husband grew up in the North End. We actually own a couple of rental homes next door to us and across the street. And I keep those rents very well controlled and probably less than most of the surrounding areas. So I'm actually talking today to oppose the rezoning of this parcel of land. I have no argument that Boise does need more affordable housing. That is absolutely true. But I feel like that this large scale building of 7 stories, 100 multifamily units on 0.36 acres is just out of proportion and non-compatible in this area. Especially with the testimony earlier that the units are taller than normal units. This is actually probably larger than a 7-story traditional building. And in the surrounding several blocks, there are no units of this magnitude and a few that are 3 to 4, and I think that one is 5 stories. So I feel like this is just such a large scale building, and it will take away from the neighborhood feel because this is the entrance to the historic North End, and it will change the whole dynamic of that area. My other big concern is the traffic. It already is a large issue on State Street, on 16th Street, the one-way going south, and also up on 15th and Fort and 16th and Fort and Residue. That's a large traffic area, and ACHD was doing studies on that earlier this year. I feel like with that amount of 100 units, with probably, well, we heard earlier, 70 parking spaces, that's going to increase the traffic significantly. And that's concerning as a resident in that neighborhood. I'm also concerned about the noise potential since all of them have outside balconies. And then the infrastructure, is it capable of handling this large scale 100 multifamily units with sewer, power, water, et cetera? I just would like this issue to be studied a bit more before voting on the rezoning. Maybe talk to other local business owners, residents, the North End Neighborhood Association further, and do more of an in-depth study and see what our options are. Once this is rezoned, there's no going back. And I think Our development needs to be thoughtful and responsible in our future for the city of Boise. Thank you.
Thank you, Darby. Next up, we have Charles and Dawn. It sounds like you both signed up, maybe Matheson.
Madam Mayor, Charles and Dawn and also Catherine Lovan are not online.
Okay, all right. We did receive, I think, written testimony from Catherine Levin. We might have been the same with Charles and Dawn. I'm not sure. All right. Well, Ethan, did you stay with us from?
I did indeed. Yes, I'm here.
Great. Welcome back. Good to see you. Both you and Rory have been with us for the duration, I guess.
It makes great background noise while I'm cooking dinner. I'll just say that. All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity to testify again. Nice to see you all again. My name is Ethan Schweitzer Gaslin, and I am a resident of the North End, as I mentioned to you earlier, and I am very excited about this project. I'm testifying in support of its approval. And as a resident of the North End, this makes me very excited, just, that there will potentially be more restaurants and businesses within walking and biking distance of where I live. I don't own a car, and so I'm always excited to hear about how things in my neck of the woods in my neighborhood are developing to provide more opportunities to recreate and have activities close to where I live. I am also, I'm very glad that Matthew mentioned his background in the arts, because I knew I recognized his name from somewhere. And I just want to mention that I am also a member of the working artist community here in Boise. So I am certainly well aware of the great need to provide housing for that workforce. That is, I would say, one of the most concerning issues that I hear when I talk to other people in that line of work, and in terms of attracting talented artists and keeping talented artists in our community. That's a very important thing. With that in mind, I personally would always love to see the AMI targets a little bit lower. I can say that personally, 80 to 100% of AMI always feels like far and away, far beyond what I can ever hope to make in this line of work. So that's something that I'm always going to be wishing that there were a little bit more of. But I do certainly appreciate the overall contribution that this makes to the housing stock in our city. And as I mentioned to you all earlier this evening, in terms of reducing transportation emissions, I think this is an important project, because transportation emissions are, again, the largest source of carbon emissions in our community. And as we're trying to figure out how to reduce them, there are really two parts of reducing transportation emissions, which are providing transportation options, as we've already discussed at length this evening, and then also providing housing in close proximity to services and recreation opportunities and all those kinds of things. And with that being said, I really can't imagine a better site that is more centrally located in relation to businesses and to places that people might want to walk and bike. With that being said, I would also note that I believe, and others here would certainly know more about this than I do, that I think Valley Ride had been studying earlier in the year, had been doing a survey about rerouting the number 9 bus to potentially 27th Street. So I'm not sure if the results of that survey are available, but I certainly think that would be something to consider.
Thank you, Ethan. Good to see you again. Have a great night.
Thank you. You as well.
So I imagine there are a couple people on that have raised their hands.
Madam Mayor, we do have Jared Osteen.
Great. Jared's back too. Were we your background noise for the evening as well?
Yes. I got to listen to you while I ate dinner, so it was great. Very riveting entertainment. So thank you.
Riveting.
All right. Again, I'm Jared Austin.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I am here to speak in. Sorry, my internet's cutting out a little bit. I'll try to just keep going. My name is Jared Austin. I am in support of this project. It's a great project. I think it's a great density and a great location with great connectivity to existing investments that the city has made. It really does sit squarely in the middle of an area that has places to eat, places to shop, places to work, and it's on one of the best transit lines in the entire state. So I think that it does well to capitalize on on this kind of nexus of advantage that it has. And its density really does capitalize on that well. I think this is also an important project because it allows more people to live in an area that's historically a little more exclusive and a little more expensive than the rest of the city as a whole. And it lets them also engage in those areas of the city that maybe they historically haven't had the opportunity to be in. So I think overall, this is a great project. If we ever want to live up to the ideals of having walkable, transit-oriented development, I think now is the time, and I urge you to approve it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jared. I see Drew. So Drew, do you want to go ahead?
Oh, man.
Oh, somebody else?
Madam Mayor, we also have Patrick Spouts.
Yep, I saw Patrick too, but not right now. So Drew can go ahead, and then maybe Patrick will pop up in the screen after him.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Good evening, members of council. My name is Drew Alexander. I live about 1,000 feet from this project, and I'm here tonight to show my support. As a trained urban planner, my brain is sort of hardwired to evaluate sites and their surroundings. I purchased my home with an awareness of its proximity to downtown and nearby services. It was clear then that if Boise continued to grow, my neighborhood would and should evolve along with it. I think we all know that Boise has continued to grow. My belief, living near downtown as I do, is that I shouldn't oppose change in an attempt to preserve some form of status quo, but instead be engaged and involved to make sure that as change happens, that it's responsible, not just for today, but for the future. This is the exact type of project I had in mind for the past decade, happening near my home. It will set the pace for State Street, bringing more support for its future as a multimodal rapid transit corridor with mixed use. It's also in an activity center with a large grocery and various storefront retail within walking distance. Residents could also easily walk downtown for work or entertainment. It's really hard to think of a better location for this project. Earlier during testimony, it was mentioned that this will negatively impact the dynamic in the neighborhood. As a nearby neighbor, I couldn't disagree more. Regarding the change in zone, I believe this will actually strengthen the surrounding pedestrian commercial zone. The goals of the pedestrian commercial zone are likely to thrive most when nearby anchor commercial and residential density exist. This rounds out the second half of that equation, creating a bright future for future pedestrian commercial success. Thank you for hearing me tonight. Hope you're all doing well.
Thank you, Drew. Good to see you. And Patrick, there you are. I see you. Great. Welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate the chance to testify tonight. I'd like to speak in support of this project. As many of you have probably seen me here before, I think that adding more homes to our city is a good thing and want to meet the needs of people that want to be our neighbors. And of all the projects I've testified in the past about, this is the one that is closest to perfect. As some other people have testified tonight, including the initial presentation, it's in just all the overlays kind of line up for this kind of development. It's got a lot of units. It's in a good spot next to transit. It's a wonderful thing. And as somebody who lives in the North End, just like Drew, I welcome this to a part of my neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Good to see you. Other hands?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right. That's it that we have for this evening to testify from the public.
Madam Mayor, I apologize. Someone just raised their hand.
Oh, I spoke too soon. All right. Somebody else showed up with their hand raised.
It's Derek and Danielle Hurd.
Oh, hello, Derek and Danielle. Welcome. You almost missed your chance. You got in just in the nick of time. Are you there?
They're transferring over right now. It's Derek and Danielle.
Oh, hello, Derek and Danielle. Welcome. You almost missed your chance. You got in just in the nick of time.
It was so close. We didn't want to miss the opportunity. But just quickly wanted to say, we own.
You're good. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that we're in support of this project and density along State Street and quality design with. It was so close. We didn't want to miss the opportunity.
Oh, I thought Danielle was talking to you while you were
wanted to
talking.
say,
You're actually hearing. There's a lag in what you're hearing. You're good. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I
just wanted to say that we're in support of this project and density along State Street and quality design with. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I apologize. So just reiterating the density along State Street and quality design. I know the city's put a lot of energy into developing the State Street corridor and all of the energy that goes into that. So just wanted to speak in support of this project and the rezone to bring some density to the near North End, near downtown transit routes and things like that. We own property. If Drew said he's within 1,000 feet, I think we're within 700 feet of this project. So definitely in support as close neighbors and in support as advocates of density for downtown bikeable, walkable places. So if any changes have to happen to the project, I would say any reduction in parking, because I think this is going to be a great opportunity for biking and walking and using it to get to work and play. So thank you for your time. Sorry about that glitch. We had a sushi delivery and a coughing wife all at the same time as she ate the sushi. So had to bail out on the echo feedback. So thanks for your time. Cool project. Looking forward to seeing it come up.
Great. Thanks, Derek. All right.
No, Madam Mayor.
Nobody else. So it is now up to the applicant if you'd like to take some time to rebut anything or anything else you'd like to say in closing arguments.
No, I don't think so. Just that, I'm very happy that there's so many citizens, neighbors that are in support of the idea. The things brought up in opposition have to do with traffic and the height. We really do think we're going to be reducing traffic, and we've worked hard to balance the height to allow the density that we want and the quality of life in these units, but sort of tapering down the building so that we really do think it fits well into the neighborhood. So that's all I have. Tom, did you have anything else?
Yeah, I would like to add that there was some concern about the existing PC zone. And I think one of the folks who testified said that this is a excellent addition to the PC zone. If we left the current zone the way it is, that the maximum density you could get there is, I think, 15 units. And given the land prices in the downtown area, it's unlikely that site will get developed for housing because of the lower density. When we looked at our sites and the locations, we purposefully looked for sites in the downtown planning area and the downtown mixed-use zone, which we're on the border of it, but we're actually in the downtown, and that's a big difference between all the other PC zones. So I'd like just to add that to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom and Matthew. With that, I just want to check and see if there's any questions for staff or the applicant before we close the hearing.
Madam Mayor, just a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
Matthew, great to see you. Tom, thank you for the presentation. One, I appreciate the intent, for the project. I, know what it's like to have employees that are looking for places to live, and I want them to be able to walk and bike, close to work. And I remember what it was like when I was first starting a nonprofit, and being able to live close to downtown is the reason why it exists where it is. So I appreciate that a lot. And I have no doubt about the about the reduction in traffic. I think Council President Clegg brought up some really great points about what it could be used for as far as a gas station or something else that was quite a bit busier. And the way that it's set up, I think that there's a lot of indication that it could be a lot less, because hopefully you will have people walking and biking or taking public transit for the majority of their trips. It's a funky sidewalk and a site there. And the sidewalk is really, really old. It's cracked and it's kind of wide. I'm curious, and Tom or Matthew, if you, in your conversations with ACHD, if they've talked at all about when development happens, the sidewalk getting redone, and if there's any changes with the street width or the configuration because of that. And so I guess I just have a couple questions on if there's been any conversations around the sidewalk on that 16th Street side, and then the street improvements that might go with it.
Yeah, that was actually our very first question we asked, and to get a hold of ACHD, because it would affect our site since it's so small. ACHD says they're not widening State Street, but we are actually improving the sidewalk, and we're actually pushing the first floor back to make the sidewalk larger. We're also doing that on 16th Street. We're meeting the streetscape standards there, which include street trees and landscaping and a wide sidewalk. And we're actually, I think we're setting back there too on the ground floor.
Great. And did they end up saying anything specifically about like reconfiguration that would have to take place in the street and the bike lane and the turn lane, or is that looking the same with the way that you've got the exit and the entrance set up, and any changes to the sidewalk?
Yeah, so of course, they can't give guarantees till they actually review the actual application officially, but they did say preliminarily that our curb cuts meet the requirements. They know that we can only go so far from the intersection. We are looking at the opportunity to, if it works out, to reduce our parking. And if that's the case, one, we have to get conditional use. But if that's the case, we would remove one of the curb cuts, probably on State Street.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Tom. And then Madam Mayor, just quick follow-up, and maybe this is for Cody or a message that could be relayed.
Yes, go ahead.
I just think that I don't have any concerns about the development, people leaving parking size or anything like that. I would love to hear from ACHD or Ryan as far as if there's any reconfiguration that needs to happen to the intersection because of the way that people are exiting in and out of there. I don't know that there will be, but I do think that the sidewalk is not a normal sidewalk width, and there are some kind of narrow lane things going on there with a bike lane that's probably too narrow. And so I'm just wondering if this development has the ability to, since they are trying to encourage more pedestrian and bicycle use, has the ability to improve some of the street layout with that at the same time.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, certainly ACHD will evaluate this in much greater detail when the applicant still needs to go through design review. And so they'll put very specific, the plans included in the development agreement are quite conceptual. And so once we get to design review, we'll have exact dimensions, and we have streetscape standards for down there as well. So we'll ensure that, any additional right-of-way that's needed, sidewalk improvements all occur through that process.
Perfect. Thank you, Cody. And again, Tom, Matthew, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, with that, I will thank you both for joining us and close the public hearing so that this is before council.
Madam Mayor.
Oh.
I am so completely and utterly impressed with this project. I would like to make the motion.
I'm sorry, I'm just not used to having somebody on both sides.
Yes. I thought you were just not used to me making a motion, which could also be the case. Yes, I would like to tip my hat to Tom and Matthew, your dog in the back as well. This is an extremely impressive work that you've put together here. And well, there's some opposition, and there normally is, and that's well taken. I I'm very impressed with how many people support it directly surrounding it, and it certainly is much needed. So I'll make the motion that we approve CAR 20-00019, the rezone of 0.36 acres from PCDD to C5DD-DA at 1522 West State Street. And congratulations, it's great work.
Second,
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
Madam Mayor.
I'm going to go first with the Council President Pro Tem and then Council Member Woodings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Clark, Mr. Sheldon, I just wanted to thank you for bringing forward this project. And I would just want to encourage you, in deference to all federal and state and local housing laws, if you could do your level best to make sure to build those relationships with folks who are desperately trying to find housing for Boiseans and for people who live in the area, the artists who testified tonight. And Mr. Clark, I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of those folks, having worked in the arts for as long as you have and been a part of the nonprofit world. So that's just a personal plea. But thank you. I think this is going to be an exciting project. And I am so happy for all the people who get to live in such a beautiful spot in our city.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
I can't do anything with the PC zone unless I mention that it's my favorite zone, but I have never been happier to rezone something from the PC zone to something else. I think this is just a great spot for this really nice, really dense development that's going to give a whole lot of people places to live, near where they work, near where they can walk to the grocery store, where they can walk next door and get medical care. It's very thoughtful. And I really appreciate folks being thoughtful about our built environment in our city and putting our land to really great use. So thank you for bringing this.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I will also be supporting this project. I am excited to see this kind of housing brought to this location. Jared mentioned that historically people of little means could not live in this neighborhood, and I'll object to that because 40 years ago when we bought our house, we were people of little means and we could afford to live here. But the neighborhood has certainly changed in those 40 years. And frankly, I couldn't afford to buy a house there today. Only do live there because we bought it so long ago. Over the years, I've seen the neighborhood change and seen a lot of the folks who I really valued as neighbors in that neighborhood have to leave because of the price. And so I'm really excited to see this project. Recently purchased a book that brought out some really interesting statistics. In 1900, Americans lived on average per person on 60 square feet. Today, the average per person is 300 square feet. The North End neighborhood has declined in population in the last 15 years by a little over 2,000 residents. And that decline is happening because people are living bigger. They're living in more space. If we're going to keep the neighborhood vibrant, any neighborhood in the city vibrant, we're going to have to figure out how to get more units into the neighborhoods because of that change. And so I think this is a project that's going to do that very well. I already mentioned the traffic. I bring that up. I live very near the Hyde Park Place project. And when it was built, there was similar concerns. Traffic was going to be overwhelming. But in fact, as is the case here, the prior use actually produced more traffic and was projected to produce more traffic than the new use that is there today. In that case, that's proven out not just to be true to the projections, but much below the projections. I would suspect that Tom's right, that the projections here are high. given the location, given the access to transit, given the walkability and bikeability of this neighborhood, I suspect the actual traffic counts will be much lower than projected and certainly lower than what they are today, given the use that's there today. So for all those reasons, and finally, I should say, I'm also a fan of PC zone. It's not the appropriate zone on this corner anymore, although it's a lot better zone than the C12 that was there a few years ago. It's not the appropriate zone for this corner anymore. And rezoning it, especially with the DA to limit the height, ultimately limit the height, no matter what is here, I think is very appropriate. So I will be supporting.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Halliburton.
I'll certainly be supporting this, without a doubt. There were three really, I think, great things about this the subject that came before us. One, I think Rory turned out to be our new spokesperson for our grower housing program. That was incredible. And so I was glad that he could share that very unique insight. Two, it was great to see so many people in support of a big project like this, which I would say this is a big, significant project. And by and large, for people to be in support of it isn't something that we see all the time. And I think that that's really testament to the third thing, in that, we really had somebody who designed a very well thought out in both form and function development. And, I think part of that comes from, the mind of an artist and an architect who were able to put something together that really served the needs of Boise, and folks who were really in touch with Boise from the very beginning of the process of what they were trying to create and a community that they were trying to give back to. So I really appreciate the time and effort, and I think just really in-depth thought that was put into this project. I don't know that I feel like we always see it at such a in-depth level, and I think that that's a clear testament for the great testimony that we had tonight. So thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
I agree completely with Councilman Halliburton and the Council President.
Great, thanks. I gotta say, Councilman Halliburton, I agree with you on Rory, but think that he and his wife had to leave his adult children back at home and move themselves on down to one of these places since they've opened their home again to their kids. Really enjoy that empty nest that won't have any room for anybody else.
Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor.
Yes.
That does remind me of one thing that really struck me about Mr. Hester's testimony in particular, is that so often we hear from the current users of the property or the land use area that we're looking at. And there's, because of the way that metaphysics in the universe works, of course, you can't hear from the future. But Mr. Hester's testimony was about as close as we get. He's got 6 young people who are coming back into the family home because they don't have options here for housing. These are the people who will be using our city in the future. And so I really appreciated the perspective that he was able to offer in particular, because it's such a difficult and such an important voice, such a difficult voice to capture in these hearings. So I really appreciated that. I'm not going to ask him or expect him to come testify at every one while he's traveling around the country trying to support his family, but I really valued his input tonight.
Madam Mayor?
Go ahead.
Just a question, because I'm learning by doing, as we all are. So do we need to say anything in particular, or maybe I'm saying it right now, about asking that design review consider the mirrors at the exit that I can't remember if it was Council President Clegg brought up, and the street and sidewalk improvements that Councilmember Halliburton brought up as well?
Yes, it's actually entirely appropriate in your own comments so that it's reflected in the record that we'd like attention given to that, among other items that they'd review.
Thank you.
Great, and with that, the clerk can go ahead and call the roll.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Excellent, well, thanks. Great to see you two tonight, and look
Thank you
forward.
all.
Thank you
care.
very much.
Bye-bye. We have one more item before us. And thanks everybody that joined, and for many of you that kept us on background noise all evening for that topic. It was nice to hear from you tonight. Next up, we have CAR 20-20 at 10, I don't know how to say this number at this point, 10881 West Florence Drive. We've got Cody again. Welcome back, Cody. For staff, Stephanie Hopkins of KM Engineering as the applicant. I don't have a neighborhood association or anybody from the public signed up in advance to testify, so just raise your hand if you're here for this. And go ahead, Cody.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. This item is a request to modify a development agreement associated with property at 10881 West Florence Drive. If you're unfamiliar with the area, it's just southwest of the 5 Mile and Fairview Avenue intersection in West Boise. The roughly 3-acre site is zoned R2, or medium density residential. The applicant is actually not proposing to change that. The R2 zone does allow up to 14.5 units per acre. However, when this site was initially rezoned, there was a development agreement placed on the property that limited the project at that time to 10 units an acre. The applicant is now proposing to remove or reduce that cap and reference a different concept plan in the development agreement. As indicated in your packet, staff and the Planning Commission felt that additional density in this location is consistent with the compact land use designation. Also, as designed in the concept, it provides a nice transition between the project and the single-family home to the east, and then the single-family homes to the east and the higher density development to the west. The fact that the site is within walking distance of the commercial corridor along Fairview Avenue and less than a quarter mile from bus service further supports added density in this location. As far as changes to the site plan, I think you can see on the screen it did change connectivity a bit. Rather than providing 2 public streets, the applicant is now providing 1. That connection will complete an important east-west connection from Florence to Irving. The connectivity on Florence will still be provided, but via a service drive with sidewalks. We recognize that there's always a preference towards public streets, but this is kind of a unique piece of property, and 2 public streets would have consumed a significantly more land. In this case, we're able to achieve the density and achieve the connectivity and provide additional housing in an important location and still get that important neighborhood connectivity. I would note that a condition of approval did require an additional pedestrian pathway generally aligned with the Florence Drive alignment on the northern portion of the site. The original project, again, included 28 units in 8 multifamily buildings. The new proposal now has 40 units in 7 multifamily buildings. This results in a density of 13.6 units an acre, which is still under the 14.5 allowed in the underlying zone. The inclusion of 3-story structures also allows for additional open space to be provided. That results in a design that incorporates well with the neighborhood. That design is enhanced further through the ability to provide increased setbacks, especially to the south and east, where the project abuts single-family residential. I would also note that in addition to the playground equipment originally proposed, the project now includes a community center that was not included before. There was some concern expressed at the Planning and Zoning Commission, primarily related to traffic and parking. As it relates to traffic, the Ada County Highway District did approve the application. We acknowledge we will see an increase in traffic on both Florence and Irving. However, both will still operate below an acceptable threshold. As it relates to parking, all required bicycle parking and automobile spaces will be provided. And then I would note that the project meets or exceeds all dimensional standards and required no variances. With that, I believe it wraps up my comments. We remain unaware of any opposition to the proposal from public agencies serving the site. The project will add homes in an appropriate location consistent with the vision of the comprehensive plan. And so with that, we are recommending approval of the modification to the development agreement this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Cody?
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Couple of questions. So first of all, Cody, I'm unclear which of these units will end up being the ones that are that have the affordability on them. It said the units to the east, but then the map I saw showed a different color on the units to the west.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, it's probably best to have the applicant team speak to that. The colored map you're referring to that was in the packet was related to phasing, but they can kind of outline how they intend to approach the affordability in the project.
Okay. Second question, there appears to be two mature trees on the western portion of the property, one right at the corner of Florence and one sort of midway where the two units there are on the east. I was unclear if either of those were going to be retained or if there's been any arborists take a look at them to see what kind of health they're in.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, at this stage, with just the modification of the development agreement, we haven't gotten into that level of detail. They do still have to go through design review. They may have expanded on their plans a little bit since these were submitted and could address that. But certainly through a design review, we'll make every attempt to, save the trees that can be saved or mitigate for those that do have to be removed.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, as it was approved at the Planning and Zoning Commission, it continued to show the walkway on the north, and I don't see that on these plans.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, that's if the visuals didn't include it, it remains a condition of approval that was required by the Planning and Zoning Commission. A pathway just in the general location of the Florence Drive alignment up there on the northern portion of the site.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we can go ahead and hear from the applicant. Hi, Stephanie, welcome.
Hi there, let me share my screen real quick. Hopefully that'll show it for you. Is everybody able to see my screen with the title slide there?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, wonderful. Stephanie Hopkins with KM Engineering. Cody did a wonderful job and thoroughly explained our request this evening. So I'll try to limit the amount of repetition in my presentation and keep it kind of quick. But I'm here representing our client and the developer and owner of this property to develop the Celebration Acres multifamily housing development, which, as Councilwoman Clegg mentioned, is an affordable housing project. So I'll get to some detail there. And then we do have members of the development team on the phone too. I think they're virtual, that can speak to some of the details that I'm not as familiar with. So as Cody mentioned, we're requesting a rezone, which is really going to be more of a vehicle to modify an existing development agreement on the property to remove a density cap of 10 dwelling units an acre and to update a conceptual development plan that's associated with that development agreement. That's the project site. We're adjacent to some single family residential. We've got a multifamily residential to the north and then commercial to the north as well. And then the medium density residential to the west. So we're pretty consistent with the area already. And as mentioned, we're not requesting to rezone. We're just requesting to modify the existing development agreement. So as you can see, this is a map that was included with the approval for the development agreement, which showed the property at the time, 2007, and the development that was present at that point. The area has grown quite a bit since then. This graphic isn't great, but you can see that there's some multifamily that's been developed to the west and to the east, and then some commercial properties that have been further developed.
Stephanie, if you can hear me, you're moving further and further out of being like having higher volumes.
Okay.
I'm not sure how to fix it, but it's getting more difficult to hear you.
Okay, I'll try to talk a little bit more loudly and maybe I'll increase my volume. That might work.
It's changed and it sounds different.
Okay, hopefully that works better. So as I was saying, the property the area has changed significantly since the original development agreement was approved. At the time, as Cody mentioned, they'd put the cap at 10 dwelling units an acre to be more consistent with property that was located to the east. Since that time, it's developed around the area to be more dense. So we feel that an increase in the density to 13.5 units an acre would be consistent with what's existing. We're proposing to go up to 13.5 units an acre, which will allow us to do 40 units, which is consistent with the R2 district. It's also consistent with the future land use map designation of compact for the area. So this is the comprehensive plan. As you can see, we're kind of centrally located within the compact future land use map, which allows for up to 15 units an acre. And we will be below that with 13.5 units an acre. So this is the original concept plan that Cody had shown. As you can see, the site plan was different. We had 4-plex units on the north and then 3-plex units on the south, and then a central drive aisle that kind of cut through the site and connected Florence with Urban Court on the west part of the site. We're now proposing to include one public road on the west, which will be Bonanza and connect Florence Drive to Irving, and then a private street that'll connect through the parking lot in Florence on the northeast corner of the site. We've updated this to include 7 residential buildings and then the community center that we've added. So we were able to increase the number of units that we're proposing to provide while also including amenities that weren't previously included with the last site plan. And in addition, we'll add more residential units for folks that need housing in the area. This is just a graphic to give you an idea of how it's going to fit in with. It's obviously not to scale, but the site will connect with Florence Way and connect to Urban Court, and then this cul-de-sac will be improved and connected to the private drive aisle through the parking lot. So this is the current site plan with the sidewalk that had been conditioned as part of the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation and their conditions of approval. We are proposing 6 unit buildings on the periphery of the site. So these 6 buildings will be 6 units apiece, and then we've got a 4-plex that's shown in the center here close to the clubhouse. As Cody mentioned, we're meeting or exceeding the building and parking setbacks throughout the project. We're providing 62 parking spaces, so we'll have a few more than are required to make sure that guests are accommodated and there's enough parking on site. And then we are providing the clubhouse and some open spaces kind of throughout to make sure folks have places to recreate and enjoy the area. So on the affordable housing component, we're proposing 93% of the units will be reserved for eligible low income or very low income households. We'll also be including services to all residents as a requirement of the tax credit program. We do have different of those services that are going to be provided. There's behavioral health services, which includes substance abuse counseling and things of that nature, adult education classes, renter education classes, utility assistance, transportation, job training, and then supportive services for veterans families. So we have our 2 clients are partnering together to develop this site. So L-Ada Incorporated is a community partner within the Treasure Valley that's been in operation for quite some time, and they've got quite a few connections within the community. And they will be working with GA Hahn, who's also going to be developing this site, and they've got a significant amount of experience with affordable housing specifically. So they'll be partnering together to work with the Ada County Homeless Coalition and the local Department of Veterans Affairs to make sure that we have permanent housing for certain components of the population that need assistance there. They do have an MOU in place with the Charitable Assistance to Community Homeless Incorporation, or CATCH, as well. So I think Jay Francis with the development team is on the phone too, and so he can pipe in if he's got anything to add there. He's pretty well versed in that respect. So the landscape plan is shown here. As far as tree mitigation, I believe that there are a couple of trees on the east part of the site that are not they're trees that are invasive. I think they're a type of elm. It's indicated on our landscape plan, but I don't have it printed out large enough to see exactly what it is. But our landscape architect will work with the city arborist and make sure that our plans are meeting their requirements for any mitigation that might be required. And then, as you can see, we do have some kind of areas of landscaping and kind of more of a buffer against the existing adjacent residential to make sure that any of the bulk from the height of the buildings or anything like that aren't going to be too obtrusive on folks that already live in the area. So this is the proposed phasing plan that we'd shown as part of our application. We are, as part of the PUD, we've requested that we phase the project into 2 phases to include the 5 residential buildings within phase 1, as well as the community center, and then 2 additional buildings in phase 2. And these will just be constructed in phases primarily to make sure funding and some of the other components of the affordable housing kind of come into place the way that they're supposed to. But really, I think the intent of the developer is to develop all of this as quickly as they can to make sure that they have the housing stock. So these are the residential building elevations that you saw. We're proposing a variety of materials such as board and batten, shake siding, stone veneer, and various color schemes. Most of the 6 of the buildings are 3-story, and then we've got the 2-story fourplex building. And the community center is located there. It's central for everyone to be able to access easily. And the materials in the building elevations there are meant to complement the buildings themselves to kind of make a cohesive product. So overall, we really believe that this development is consistent with the vision of the comprehensive plan in providing additional residential opportunities in this area. Infill area that's close to transportation, existing services, employment opportunities, and a well-established neighborhood. We believe that this community is going to be a valuable addition to the area and will add an affordable housing stock that just isn't really available in West Boise at this point. So we're complying with the dimensional standards of the R2 district and believe that this density is going to be appropriate. And we're really asking for something that's in compliance with R2 in general. We're in agreement with the staff report and the recommended conditions of approval, and appreciate all of staff's coordination and assistance in getting all of this kind of put together and understanding the steps throughout the process. So with that, I will stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Stephanie. There are folks in our community, when they hear words like affordable housing or low-income housing, they don't really know what that means. So can you tell us what the price range for that you're working with here in these units?
Yeah, so that might be something that I'll have Jay come in on if he's
But if
available.
you could do whatever you can on your end so we can hear you, because you've got a great story. And we want people to hear you, so get up close.
Okay, I might have Jay talk on this point just because he's super familiar with it. So I think he may be available.
Yeah, I'm here, Stephanie. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Thank you, esteemed council members and Madam Mayor. We are targeting very low income here on both projects. What we're looking at on the east side of the Bonanza there is targeting 30% or below AMI. And so what that is it's at 30% of air medium income. And so that could be anywhere from $0 to a few $100 depending on the particular applicant. We are targeting very low income here on both projects. Looking at on the east side of the Bonanza there.
I think we got your answer, Justin, but I'm hearing his testimony played back to him delayed.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
I think if you're on YouTube, it plays later. So you may just mute that if you're.
Oh no, Justin, don't mute yourself. Although we
Yeah,
got the
sorry.
answer to the Council President Pro Tem's question. So let me see if there's any other questions.
Madam Mayor.
Zoom gets harder as the night goes longer. Yes, Council President, go ahead.
Thank you. Justin, thanks for being here, and I really appreciate what you guys are trying to do with this project. My question about the 2 units that are targeted for 30% AMI, so they are the 2 units on the east? And here's, my question is this. The 2 units on the east are the only 2 that are directly adjacent to single family. All the other units are adjacent either to right-of-way or to multifamily. And I just wondered why you chose those 2 units to target the lowest income in. So they are the 2 units on the east. And here's, my question is this. I'm unable to hear, Madam Mayor.
No, Council President, you're good, but I'm concerned that both Justin and Stephanie are listening to us via YouTube, and so they're not hearing the question in real time.
I can hear you now. I'm on the Zoom.
Okay, yeah, being on the Zoom is helpful so that we, it just, you know, it's like a long time ago when FaceTiming was, it just didn't work. So yes, you can be on Zoom so we can talk in real time and not have us second guessing each other. That'd be great.
Madam Mayor, just to clarify.
Sure.
What we're proposing is on the east side, which is composed of 28 units, 25 of those units are going to be affordable, targeting 30 to 60% AMI. And on the west side, we have 11 of the 12 units at 30% AMI to 60%. And so we didn't pick either side. The whole particular project is a mixed use with only 4 overall units of the 40 units being market rate units. As Stephanie alluded to earlier, 93% being affordable.
Okay. Thank you. That's very helpful. I was just a little confused. It was hard to understand exactly which was and which wasn't. I appreciate that. 11
of the 12 units at 30% AMI.
All right. Any other questions? No, we still have we haven't hit the public hearing testimony yet. Is anybody signed up to testify?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, nobody signed up to testify. And if there are no further questions, I'll give Stephanie and Justin, I think you're both working together as applicants, the opportunity for any final comments.
I think in closing, we're excited for this project, and it's been a long time coming, and it'll be a really great asset to West Boise, and will provide a lot of housing opportunities for folks that don't have that opportunity right now. So we're excited to keep working with the city on this, and look forward to your hopefully approval on it.
Thanks so much. And with that, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing so the matter is before council.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the modification to a development agreement on 2.95 acres in an R-2D DA medium density residential within design review and development agreement zone for CAR 20-00020 located at 10881 West Florence Drive.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Stephanie, Justin, this was very exciting to hear that this kind of development is going to be brought to our city. We have heard the pleas from our citizens wanting more opportunities for them to get into housing. And I believe that our citizens are going to be very, very happy to see this project come forward. So thank you so much, and best of luck as this project moves forward.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Stephanie, Justin, this obviously took a whole lot of collaboration and moving pieces with different organizations and sectors and, across the board. And I know that that's not easy to navigate. So I just really wanted to say thank you for putting this forward and putting all the work into something that our city desperately needs. So thank you for the hard work.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll be supporting this application. It's really good to see this come forward. I'm happy to see more units. It's an interesting area. We had another application just a few weeks ago from Leap Charities, very near here. And it's apparent to me that as a city, there's some things that we should be looking at to invest in this particular neighborhood. Got a lot of residents out here now. They don't really have access to a park. There's maybe the potential for that with the further south from the project we saw a few weeks ago. It also looks like there's potential for one of our canal pathways that we've been looking at. So in addition to supporting this, just know that I'll be looking for those other opportunities where the city can invest in making sure that the residents you bring out here have opportunities for recreation and getting places as well.
Okay, thanks. Well, I won't be voting tonight, it appears, but I just want to say thanks also for bringing this forward with the additional units. Tonight's public hearings were interesting. We see this, which will bring us 40 affordable units, at the price point for people that really, really need support, that 30% AMI and below. And then the piece beforehand, another proposal that'll bring more homes closer to town, but also provide workforce housing that's so desperately needed in this community. And it's partners like you at Celebration Acres and others that'll, in partnership with this city, make this possible for us to meet our goals. And so just really appreciate you bringing this forward tonight. I think, Clerk, will you go ahead and call the roll?
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you all, and thanks for everybody who showed up for this application this evening. I guess it was the applicants. Great sign. There's nothing else to come before the council, so we can take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn, Madam Mayor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned for the evening. Take care, everybody. Stay healthy, be well.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.